News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, King Charles will today lay a wreath at the death wall on the site of Auschwitz, being the first monarch to ever visit the site. To honour this momentous moment, GB News will be there live on the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz from the Nazis. Donald Trump has secured a huge victory by forcing Colombia to accept 2 planes full of illegal criminals they originally had rejected. And then Trump threatened a punishing 25% tariff on all Colombian imports and threatened to cancel visas for all Colombian officials. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could do the same with our illegal immigrants? And a ridiculous diversity guide issued to 3 major police forces has warned coppers not to use phrases like black sheep or blacklisted over, of course, racism fears. I'll be joined by a campaigner who says that this, well, it's a black day for free speech. That's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have your company. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have a leader who simply said enough is enough? The illegal criminals in our country, we are simply going to fly them back to their host nation. If they won't be accepted, well, that's no problem. We're going to stop all foreign money going to you. There goes foreign aid. There goes any visas of anybody coming in. Until we take your worst citizens back, I'm afraid we're going to freeze all diplomatic ties with you. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Wouldn't you like a bit of that in this country? Well, Donald Trump has just done that in America, and guess what? The electorate like it. And a poll out today says that British voters would like a bit of the same as well. Unfortunately, we don't seem to have any politicians with the mettle to do that. Get in touch the usual way. It's gbnews.com/your say. Now, here's your headlines, and it's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. 2 minutes past 3. Well, the top story today, ceremonies are underway to mark 80 years since the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, where 1.1 million people, mostly Jews, were murdered. Around 50 survivors are returning to lay wreaths this afternoon and light candles and speak at a service attended by world leaders. King Charles has described it as a sombre and a sacred moment, while the Prince and Princess of Wales will attend a Holocaust Memorial Day service in London. Speaking a short while ago, His Majesty remembered all of those who were affected.
Liberation of Auschwitz is both a sombre and indeed a sacred moment. It is a moment when we recall the 6 million Jews, old and young, who were systematically murdered.
In other news, the Prime Minister and President Trump have agreed to meet soon following their first phone call since the inauguration. The 45-minute conversation focused on strengthening US and UK ties, along with the economy and the Middle East. It comes just hours after President Trump praised Sir Keir Starmer for, quote, doing a very good job. Meanwhile, Colombia has backed down in a trade dispute with the United States, agreeing to accept deported migrants after threats of 25% tariffs. Colombia's foreign ministry says it's resolved the impasse, even sending a presidential plane to collect the migrants. Well, Shadow Minister for Business and Trade, Dame Harriet Baldwin, told us here on GB News she was glad to see tariffs weren't discussed between President Trump and the Prime Minister.
I'm delighted to see that it wasn't discussed yesterday, that we don't seem to be in the tariff firing line at the moment. But I think we've got to be, as a country, as a global trading nation, one that articulates the case for not having tariffs. And I'm very pleased that when the Chancellor gave evidence to the Treasury Committee earlier this year, she also made that point. So I think we've got to be a strong voice for free trade around the world.
And 7 members of one of Scotland's worst child sexual abuse rings have been handed lifelong sentences and warned they may never be released. The group inflicted horrific abuse, including rape and attempted murder on children under the age of 13 over 7 years in Glasgow's drug den, dubbed the Beastie House. The judge in the case described the abuse as beyond his experience, but praised the children's courage and perseverance despite threats from the gang. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you very shortly. Now, though, it's over to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. And we now begin today's show by marking Holocaust Memorial Day. And commemorations are being held, as you can see, live at the site of Auschwitz-Birkenau to mark the 80th anniversary of the Nazi death camp's liberation. In total, 17 million people died during the Holocaust, including 6 million Jews, 4.5 million Soviet citizens, 3.3 million Soviet prisoners of war, and 1.8 million Poles. And at Auschwitz itself, 1.3 million Jews were sent there. 1.1 million were murdered or died of malnutrition and other ailments. One of the biggest stains on all of human history. And today, we remember that, so it will never be repeated. We can now speak with GB News' royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who is in the area. Cameron, we're just going to listen in for a while, actually, and then we'll join with Cameron. And as we're waiting for the speeches to commence, we are expecting King Charles is there, the first attending monarch in history, in British history. Survivors we can see there now of the Holocaust, of Auschwitz, making their way to the front. This will most likely be the last of the great anniversaries where there will be survivors due to their age, of course, 80 years on. These will have been some of the youngest prisoners of war in Auschwitz. We're expecting around about 5 p.m. the King will be laying a wreath at the death wall, so called, of course, because that's where the prisoners of war were sent to queue up before they went to meet their ghastly fate in those gas chambers. And we can now cross to our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who is live at this event. Cameron, hugely moving scenes here of very old survivors walking their way towards the front. You can hear a pin drop in there, and of course the King is in attendance. Cameron Walker, tell us more.
Yes, Martin, incredibly moving, incredibly poignant. There's around 50 survivors, we think, inside this special tent that has been built over the gates of death here at Auschwitz-Birkenau. And that gate at the bottom of it contains an archway which is just big enough to fit a freight train car through. And in each of those freight train cars were packed thousands and thousands of victims. As we were just hearing, I believe, one of those survivors delivering a speech at Auschwitz. As soon as we do have a translation, we will bring that to you. But what I can tell you is today, although there are several world leaders in attendance, including King Charles, as well as the Polish President, President Duda, and Emmanuel Macron of France, and other European royalty, it is only the survivors who will be delivering speeches. It's the world leaders who will be listening to their testimony, listening to their memories of this horrific place, and why it is so important to remember what happened here to ensure it never happens again, particularly with the rise of anti-Semitism. And His Majesty, during this ceremony, alongside the other survivors and alongside other world leaders, he will be laying a light, a candle, at the foot of the freight car that has been placed in the centre underneath the gates of death, because, as you said, Martin, 1.1 million people were murdered here in Auschwitz. A vast majority of those were gassed on arrival. They were literally pulled off of the trains. They were selected, families split apart, men, women, children, babies, and put into a gas chamber. Those that did survive, and many of them succumbed to starvation, exposure, and deprivation as well. I believe we can take you back now to the commemorative service.
So that we shared with them our memories. However, there's always been a very small minority of us who went through all those selections positively. That number itself was very little, and those who lived to see freedom, there were hardly none. So few. And now there is only a handful. Such a small bevy. That is why I believe that our thoughts should now go towards this huge majority, those millions of victims who will never tell us what they experienced, what they felt, just because they were consumed by that mass destruction, the Shoah. However, there is a certain document that has survived. A document, a poem, that to a particular degree tells us something about those very people. And do remember the name. It's by Henryka Łazowert. Henryka Łazowert. She was a Polish poetess. She had very successful attempts at writing literature. She had an opportunity to hide beyond the walls of the ghetto, but she was loath to leave her mother behind. Today, when I listen to her poem, I find it as something that goes absolutely beyond any thing that the mind can imagine. This is a document. We have a photo of Henryka. She was a beautiful woman. She was 33. By that time, she had been a recognized poet, a Polish poet. She wrote in Polish, and as a Jewess, she was sentenced to annihilation. She had an opportunity to find a hiding place on the so-called Aryan side, but she didn't want to leave her mother. She wrote a letter, a poem, to her friend. Let me quote that letter. I'm going somewhere there, to a very distant place, a station that is unknown, for it is not in any map. There is the sky hanging over the station like a huge black lid. The engine shrieks with the voice of a beaten man. The train drivers have the faces of paper. All I have with me is just one suitcase and one grief that no one's ever tried to plummet. I'm so very composed, and what you cannot see at all, so very sad. Be healthy, my distant. There are hearts where nothing changes. I am no longer. No longer. May I ask all the present to stand up for a moment's silence? Thank you. Thank you very much. Dear friends, for at least 2,000 years of our civilization, we've been accompanied by a vision of apocalypse. Here, The four riders of apocalypse arrive: war, pestilence, hunger, and death. People are perplexed with fear, paralyzed with that fear. And they feel absolutely helpless. What can be done? At this point, I would like to quote a song that certainly many of you would recognize if I hummed the tune, but don't worry, I'm not going to sing. But all I want is to draw your attention to the lyrics, because these lyrics are exceptionally inspiring. The author of the lyrics is Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, who was better known as Rabbi Nachman of Humain, because that was where he had his body buried among the graves of the victims of a pogrom. All our world, the whole world we have, is nothing, a very narrow bridge, and which is most important, one must not be afraid at all. Thus,
that is a
not to be afraid, we see in the contemporary world today and now, we see a huge rise in anti-Semitism, and that is precisely anti-Semitism that led to the Holocaust. Deborah Lipstadt called it the tsunami of anti-Semitism, and it was her courage, her tenacity in fighting with Holocaust denial, which in English is called the denial of the Holocaust, put an end to it. It ended in a success after she won a trial against David Irving in London. Let us not fear demonstrating the same courage today when Hamas attempts at denial of the massacre of the 7th of October. Let us not oppose the conspiration theories saying that all the evil of this world results from a plot started by some indefinite social groups, and Jews are often mentioned as one of such. Let us not fear discussing the problems that torment the so-called last generation. These young people may disturb our social order, they may disturb our system of truth, yet whether the judge has pronounced the sentence when he uttered those memorable words, perhaps today I sentence tomorrow's heroes. Let us not be afraid to convince ourselves that we can solve problems between neighbours, because for centuries, on many continents, many nations, many peoples, and many ethnic groups have lived and have had their homes among one another and between one another. All the hatred, all the hate speech led to armed conflicts between those neighboring peoples and ethnic groups. That always ended in bloodshed. Yet, luckily, there are the positive experiences as well, when both the sides reach a conclusion that they have no other way of ensuring a peaceful, safe and secure life for their children, grandchildren and for the future generations, then leading to a compromise. Let me quote here two examples from Europe, Germans and the French, Poles and Lithuanians. Let me reiterate, let us not fear convincing ourselves that one needs to have a vision not only of what is here today, but also what is going to come tomorrow and what will come in several decades. Thank you for your attention.
Was a Holocaust survivor, a survivor of Auschwitz. An astonishing speech there. Very frail now, 98-year-old Marian Turski, but incredibly powerful sentiment and words. He survived Auschwitz, but his brother and his father were murdered there. They didn't make it. He spoke about how anything that went on at Auschwitz goes beyond anything that the mind can ever possibly imagine. Dedicated his speech today to a small minority of survivors who went through all of the selections, the selection processes of those that were sent to the gas chambers behind them there. He said, to those who lived to see freedom, there were hardly none, so few. And now there is only a handful. He went on to talk about the tsunami of anti-Semitism that was unleashed by the Nazis. But he then says that still goes on to this day, then referenced Hamas and October the 7th and how we should never allow the cancer of anti-Semitism to once again take a grip. He said, we are still fighting to this day, astonishingly, those who talk of Holocaust denial. How can anybody deny such a thing when they are at a place like Auschwitz? Incredibly moving to think this 80th anniversary will be the last major anniversary. 98 years old now, Marian Turski on the stage addressing world leaders, heads of state, including King Charles, President Zelensky of Ukraine, Giorgia Meloni from Italy, Emmanuel Macron, France, and Scholz from Germany, all in absolute silence as Marian Turski remembered the place he survived. 1.1 million Jews didn't survive. They were murdered there, including his own brother and his own father, who perished. We can see on our screens now pictures, historic pictures of the time when Auschwitz was liberated by the Allies. Pictures so inhumane, so unbelievable, that at first the world didn't believe it was true. They didn't believe this was real, but it was. And these stories must be told over the decades to ensure history is never repeated. It's an incredibly moving moment. There it is, that's Auschwitz behind it, and now the world's leaders in a semicircle facing those literary gates of death there. Cameron Walker, you're at Auschwitz. You've been observing these proceedings. Incredibly moving, and we're later expected, as we see music now being played, we're later expecting King Charles to light a candle around about 5 p.m. and I believe lay a wreath. Cameron Walker.
Indeed, Martin, and it is the first time that King Charles, or indeed any British head of state, has visited the site of the Nazi former concentration camp Auschwitz-Birkenau, where 1.1 million people were murdered. A vast majority of those were Jewish. And as you said, Martin, an incredibly moving speech from Marian Turksi, who was 98. As you said, he lost his family. He also survived a death march here from Auschwitz just before the liberation 80 years ago. Today, he became visibly emotional at points, understandably. And all the speeches being delivered today are not political. They're not politicians. They're not world leaders. It is purely the survivors and those who work to preserve the memory of those who lost their lives here in the Holocaust. As for the world leaders, whether it's King Charles, Emmanuel Macron, President Zelensky or others, they are just sitting quietly and observing until, in a picture moment, they will be laying candles at the foot of one of the freight train cars, which has been put underneath the gates of death. And it was those cars which packed thousands of people inside to be transported from across Europe, from as far as France, Belgium, Hungary, wherever, to come here to Poland, to Auschwitz-Birkenau, where upon selection the vast majority of people were murdered almost immediately in gas chambers, and that included men, women, children and babies. And those who did survive the initial selection were then interred into this camp, and many of which died of starvation or exposure or another kind of deprivation, disease as well. And when the Soviet Red Army came 80 years ago to liberate this camp, just 7,000 people survived. Incredibly weak, but they were alive. And King Charles, following this ceremony, which is expected to last a couple of hours, will be visiting Auschwitz I, just further down the road, and will be laying a wreath, we believe, at the death wall, and also to observe some of those items confiscated from the thousands of victims when they arrived here: suitcases, glasses, pairs of shoes. And of course, he'll be looking at the death wall where SS officers, that's the military arm of the Nazi party, executed by firing squad so many innocent prisoners. Martin.
Cameron Walker, the survivor who is now addressing the audience there. I was very, very fortunate on the 75th anniversary while I was a Member of Parliament in the European Union. She addressed the entire Parliament in Brussels. There must have been 1,000 people in that room, and it was utterly silent as she told her story. These stories are just so powerful. 80 years on, and now their age is making them bow, but their words still resolute to this day. Amazing stuff. Thank you very much, Cameron Walker. Of course, we'll cross back for the rest of the proceedings as King Charles, in around about an hour and a half time, lays that wreath at the death wall there at Auschwitz. Okay, how do you follow that? It seems almost piffling. Chris Hope joined me here in the studio to talk about domestic politics. Almost seems insignificant. And in fact, you told me you met with a Holocaust survivor at Portcullis House in British Parliament last week.
That's right, in Parliament last week, Portcullis House, where it's a busy journalists, MPs, researchers wandering around, normally as a hubbub, but like 9:30 a.m. last Wednesday, the place fell silent as we all listened to a 95-year-old Holocaust survivor, Yisrael Abeletz, one of 6 children born in 1930 in Hungary. Now, he was sent to Auschwitz in 1944. He survived a number of selections for the gas chamber, and then had to take part in the infamous death march till he was liberated by the Russians. So, and to see him there, and he showed us that tattoo on his arm, which was put there by the Nazis to identify him. I think I would advise anybody to listen to the testimony of these amazing individuals before they've all gone, because it is really a reminder of where we were in the past and where we can never go again. And there's politics around this, if you can call it that. There's a national Holocaust memorial due to be built next to Parliament. It's been announced back in 2015 by David Cameron. It's been held up in planning issues because some people don't believe it's appropriate to have it there, and there's some protections on the land there. But I think you can see why you need a Holocaust memorial, because as these individuals are no longer here, we need a reminder of what happened.
Thank you, Chris Hope, sharing that. And, of course, we'll return to more domestic politics later in the show. Thank you, Chris Hope. And lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including we'll be crossing to Leeds after local police have launched an investigation after the memorials to 2 murdered Leeds police officers were damaged at the weekend. Utterly repugnant behaviour. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead, it looks to remain unsettled, heavy showers and some longer spells of rain. Staying rather windy too, particularly across the far southwest. And it's all thanks to this area of low pressure just out to the west of the country. This is dragging in those showers. Also a good squeeze in the isobars, particularly in the southwest, where we're seeing the strongest of the winds as we head into this evening. So plenty of showers feeding through, these merging together to bring longer spells of rain. Could turn rather heavy at times, perhaps hearing some hail and thunder as we head into the overnight period, and could even cause some flooding issues, particularly across Wales and the southwest, where we've seen quite a lot of rain already. And under those cloudier skies, temperatures largely remaining above 0, but in the wind and rain, it could feel fairly cool at times. So to start on Tuesday then, plenty of showers across the south. As I say, these merging together, bringing rather heavy spells of rain for the Tuesday morning commute. So do take care if you're out and about. And similar across western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest of England, could see some rather heavy showers at times. And we may even see some winteriness amongst these showers as they fall across the Scottish Highlands, and still plenty of spells of rain across the Northern Isles too. So once again, heading into tomorrow, a very unsettled day on offer, and still rather windy, particularly across the southwest, where there is still a chance of gales across southwestern coast. So we could see a rather wet day on offer across parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, where those showers are set to remain through most of the day. And once again, still rather windy across northern parts of Scotland, and still could see a chance of some snow across hilly areas. Temperatures around about where they should be for the time of year, but something slightly milder just moving into the southwest, though amongst the wind and rain it could still feel rather chilly at times. A rain warning still in force across southern parts of Wales as we head into Tuesday evening, so once again we could see some impacts here. But from Thursday onwards there should be more dry weather around, perhaps even seeing some sunshine at times, and temperatures remaining around about average for the time of year.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Derbyshire, the M1 northbound is partly blocked by a broken down lorry on the exit to Worksop at junction 30, so do expect some minor delays. In Hertfordshire, the A1M northbound is shut after a collision. It's happened just before junction 9 for Letchworth and the A505. In Berkshire, delays on the M4 eastbound. That's queuing after a vehicle overturned just after junction 13 for Newbury and the A34. And in Devon, delays at Up Ottery on the A303. That's been shut in both directions because of flooding. So the A303 now closed between the Yarcombe turnoff in Up Ottery and the Buckland St Mary turnoff.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:37. Now, 7 members of a Glasgow-based child sex abuse ring who preyed on children in a drugs den have been sentenced at the High Court in Glasgow. Let's cross now, speak to our Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire. Tony, welcome to the show. A case of absolute grotesque depravity, but at last, justice has been served today. Tell us more.
Yeah, good afternoon, Martin. Certainly this is the very long-awaited end of this horrific case here at the Glasgow High Court. 7 members of what many people to believe Scotland's worst child sex gang jailed today for a total of 93 years, 6 months. Now, 7 sentences ranging between 20 years and 8 were handed out to the gang as obviously the court watched on. Now, Ian Owens, Elaine Lannery, Leslie Williams, Paul Brannan, Scott Forbes, Barry Watson and John Clark. They were involved in heinous abuse of children as found by the court between 2012 and 2019. This included but was not restricted to giving these children Class A drugs and making them perform a range of acts on them. Now, 7 were convicted in 2023, the November, but 14 months later it took various delays for the risk assessments to come through, but in the end they did allow Judge Lord Beckett to slap all 7 of them with Scotland's only order of lifelong restrictions. That means that they have extra protections for if, and it's a big if, they are ever released back into the public. Now, George Lord Beckett, he's described this case as being plunging the depths of depravity. And today he had said that he was used to hearing the worst examples of human behaviour in his courts, but even this depravity towards young children was beyond anything that he had ever encountered. Now, but he also said it also tapped into the best of humanity. He paid great time to pay homage to the children who showed formidable strength in coming forward, their fortitude and their resilience, as well as the family of carers who now still care for some of those children. He said it was impossible to imagine their desperate darkness, yet these carers have brought some light to these young lives, a home, a structure and nurture over a number of years. So certainly after 14 months of wait, after abuse that stretches all the way back to 2012, many are very happy to see 7 of these members, even though 11 were in court originally, 3 were acquitted and 1 was also told that she would face no further jail time due to good behaviour.
Tony Maguire and Lord Beckett there, just to repeat, say what you and the community should understand is that you may never be released, and you're absolutely right, Tony, to point out, in contrast to the awful abuse, the trial showed the very best of human qualities. The children showed extraordinary fortitude, strength and stamina, undergoing months and years of interviews, and now they can hope to find some peace. And if there's any comfort in this story, it is that, Tony Maguire, those survivors, having been through so much, can now help to rebuild their lives. Tony Maguire, thank you for joining us there live from Glasgow. OK, moving on. Because more than 4 million people are facing council tax rises after 8 bankrupt town halls asked for permission to raise bills by a larger amount than is even normally or legally allowed by law. In one district, household bills will increase by an astonishing 25%, the largest increase in England for 2 decades. And another 7 councils have proposed massive rises of between 10 and 15% from April. Well, we can now speak with a Tory councillor, Sally Conneran, from Windsor and Maidenhead, which is set to face the largest increase in council tax, an astonishing 25%. Sally, the first question is, how on earth have things gone so wrong that residents in your constituency are facing a quarter, 25% hike in their council tax bills?
Hi there. Well, thanks for having me. I think that's a very, very simple answer to that question. The Liberal Democrat leadership have totally lost control of the finances at the council, and they're expecting the residents to pick up the bill instead of tightening their belts and do all the promises that they had almost 2 years ago. And ever since then have just overspent 16 million and counting. And yeah, like I said, expecting the residents to pay the bill for that.
And Sally, what kind of things were they spending the money on? Let me guess. Low traffic neighbourhoods, climate change initiatives, perhaps?
Oh, yeah, we had a good climate change initiative motion go through full council a few weeks ago. Yeah, we've still got 22 job adverts going out. So they're still employing more people consistently, which involves training, pensions for them as well. There's empty office spaces. We haven't seen any plans for those office spaces to be filled and for that money to come in. There's land holdings that we were planning on doing a lot with to bring in income, and that's just been delayed and delayed and delayed. So very little has been done to stop this happening.
And what do people get in return? I mean, do people feel they're getting value for money from their council, or do they feel this is just, I don't know, just a kind of bureaucratic nightmare? They're not getting hardly anything for the money they put in. A 25% increase, I mean, who can afford that?
Well, this is the thing. It's 5 times more than what would usually be even allowed. So we currently have an average about £1,800, I think, for our council tax. So we're looking at an extra £450 per household on average. People don't have this money just lying around. Certainly at the moment, it's just not the sort of money that you find lying between your sofa cushions. It's money people are really going to have to go out and find. So it isn't something people can pay, and they shouldn't have to. It's completely unacceptable, and it is something that we will keep fighting against. It's not okay.
Now, Sally, can anything be done? We saw, for example, when Birmingham tried to squander 760 million quid on a gender pay gap, back pay, they went bankrupt. Central government stepped in. Michael Gove was still in charge then, and the Conservatives, and they put it into special measures and took over. Can anything be done? Can this be disapproved by ministers? Can it be flatly rejected? Or are the residents of your constituency just going to have to suck it up and suffer?
Well, we're pretty strong residents around here, and I don't think we will suck it up and suffer. That's not an option for us. We don't believe that the Liberal Democrat leadership is capable of bringing us out of this. And I think, to be honest, we are now hoping for an accelerated local government reform in Berkshire and to bring the commissioners in. We think that it's time to maybe accept that it isn't going to happen, it isn't going to get better, and the commissioners come in and do a better job and somehow avoid this 25% hike that is just, it's not going to bring anything better. We're not going to pay 25% more and then have our bins emptied every other day instead. No one's going to see any real benefit from this. All they're going to see is approximately £450 more come out of their bank. And that you've got to go and earn a lot of extra money to find that sort of money. The reality is people can't afford it. So it's almost a moot point. Where is this money coming from? They're not going to, then it's not going to be paid.
OK, thanks very much for joining us. And that's the Tory councillor there, Sally Conneran from Windsor and Maidenhead. More cloud cuckoo land in council land. Now, if you're in search of some winter sun, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest winter sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. The south of Europe looks pretty unsettled over the next few days. Rain at times in most areas and windy in places too. So looking at things in more detail for Tuesday, the Canaries and Madeira, mostly fine, 1 or 2 showers but some sunshine too. Some persistent outbreaks of rain across parts of Spain, southern France into Italy, even some snow across the Alps. So it's the southeast of Europe set to see the best of the conditions. As we head into Tuesday and Wednesday, we hold on to fairly unsettled weather, but something a bit quieter later in the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I'm really pleased to see this story. It's the news that bowel cancer screening, the age for that is going to be dropped from 60 to 50. And this is really, really important because bowel cancer is one of the biggest killers, and more people appear to be getting diagnosed with bowel cancer in their 50s. Not entirely clear why. And there was an inspirational woman called Deborah James who I actually met when I used to be the Shadow Health Secretary, and I remember meeting her when she had her cancer diagnosis and supporting her campaign, and she sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but it was a phenomenal campaign, and I think did inspire the nation. And this is so important. So people in their 50s are going to be sent these kits in the post. And I suppose my plea is just do not ignore these kits because you can deal with cancer if you catch it early enough.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is not the most pleasant thing to do, and a lot of us aren't used to it and talking about it and whatever, but it's essential, obviously, to do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the other reason I wanted to sort of flag this is, I mean, we can sometimes make ourselves sort of pretty miserable looking at the newspapers, but this is undoubtedly a good initiative that the government have done this, and that campaigners have persuaded the government to do this. So, look, I just want to plead to everybody watching, if you get one of these kits, use it.
And, of course, I think it's really important within that to point out that this would not have helped Deborah, because Deborah was 40 when she died. And what's really important when you see stories like this is to pay attention to what your body is telling you. And if you have symptoms that are weird, it is important to go to your doctor and to talk about them and to take the tests.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's almost 10 to 4 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, police have launched an investigation after memorials of 2 murdered Leeds police officers were appallingly vandalised, as you can see on your screens now. Police say the memorial was sprayed with black paint, and wreaths and flowers laid at the site have been strewn and thrown around. It's an astonishing desecration of what should be something so sacred. Let's now speak with GB News' Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley, who is at the site. Anna Riley, an astonishing desecration of something which should be there to remember and to be cherished. Tell us more. Has anybody been caught for this crime yet?
It really is, Martin. No, police have active inquiries ongoing, but as such, no one has yet been apprehended for it. West Yorkshire Police have labelled these acts of vandalism as absolutely disgusting. These are memorials, stone memorials for 2 police officers murdered in the line of duty. We're here outside Leeds Minster in the city centre of Leeds, where Sergeant John Speed's memorial is. He was killed in the line of duty in 1984 when he was just 39 years old. He was shot dead, and that was one of the memorial stones that has been targeted with that black paint. Thankfully, it's now being cleaned up. And then in the Gipton area of Leeds, around 4 miles out of the city centre, PC Ian Broadhurst memorial stone was also targeted, sprayed with black paint, and flowers surrounding it also strewn around, and wreaths as well. He was killed on Boxing Day 2003, just 34 years old, when he was shot dead. Now, the community have been involved in the clean-up effort, and I've been speaking to Paul Cockcroft, a Leeds resident, who's been involved in that.
You know, when the atrocity happened, I was working in Leeds, and I vividly remembered it happening. I didn't have anything to do on Sunday, and somebody sent me the picture of the vandalism, and I just thought, there's some cleaning stuff in garage. I'll go down and I'll have a good attempt, see if I can get some of this off. The memorial were there just to remind Leeds residents what had happened and how unfair it was, and what a great guy that John was, really. Really disappointed. I've seen over 1,200 comments on Facebook saying how disappointing the action's been and how disrespectful it has been. And for the memories of the families that are involved, they don't need to see that sort of stuff. They don't. They just need to be brought to justice and made to understand, you know, that these were people that just normal people coming to work, doing a job, and they were killed in the line of duty and fell in the line of duty, and nobody deserves that, really.
So Paul there just touching on the community's response and the community anger to this vandalism of these memorial stones. Police say that they believe that PC Ian Broadhurst's memorial stone was vandalised between 6:10 and 6:20 on Saturday evening, and that John Speed's memorial stone behind me here in Leeds City Centre was vandalised at 1 o'clock in the morning in the early hours of Sunday. Police saying that they believe that these incidents were linked, and sadly it's not the first time that these memorial stones have been vandalised. So police are appealing for people to come forward with information, and they're hoping that they catch these vandals very soon.
Anna Riley, thank you for bringing us up to speed there. It's just astonishing. It's astonishing that anybody would choose to do this. Anybody who remembers these killings will know how much it touched the communities. I've been contacted by people who live in the area who just absolutely just heartbroken that this could be allowed to happen. And is it funny how you get a ticket for taking the wrong turning in a car these days, and they can't find footage of anybody who did this. If anybody knows anything out there, get in touch with the police and let's get these scumbags brought to justice. Anna Riley, thank you very much for joining us there. Another one of those stories that just simply takes your breath away. What on earth is happening in Britain? If anybody thinks that is a good idea, oh my God. Anyway, plenty more to come now, including growing fears that Labour are driving us towards a recession. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. Now's your weather, and here's Honor Critic.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead, it looks to remain unsettled, heavy showers and some longer spells of rain, staying rather windy too, particularly across the far southwest. And it's all thanks to this area of low pressure just out to the west of the country. This is dragging in those showers, also a good squeeze in the isobars, particularly in the southwest, where we're seeing the strongest of the winds as we head into this evening. So plenty of showers feeding through, these merging together to bring longer spells of rain. Could turn rather heavy at times, perhaps hearing some hail and thunder as we head into the overnight period, and could even cause some flooding issues, particularly across Wales and the southwest, where we've seen quite a lot of rain already. And under those cloudier skies, temperatures largely remaining above zero, but in the wind and rain, it could feel fairly cool at times. So to start on Tuesday then, plenty of showers across the south. As I say, these merging together, bringing rather heavy spells of rain for the Tuesday morning commute, so do take care if you're out and about. And similar across western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest of England, could see some rather heavy showers at times. And we may even see some winteriness amongst these showers as they fall across the Scottish Highlands, and still plenty of spells of rain across the Northern Isles too. So once again, heading into tomorrow, a very unsettled day on offer, and still rather windy, particularly across the southwest, where there is still a chance of gales across southwestern coasts. So we could see a rather wet day on offer across parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, where those showers are set to remain through most of the day. And once again, still rather windy across northern parts of Scotland, and still could see a chance of some snow across hilly areas. Temperatures around about where they should be for the time of year, but something slightly milder just moving into the southwest, though amongst the wind and rain it could still feel rather chilly at times. A rain warning still in force across southern parts of Wales as we head into Tuesday evening, so once again we could see some impacts here. But from Thursday onwards there should be more dry weather around, perhaps even seeing some sunshine at times, and temperatures remaining around about average for the time of year.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Hertfordshire, the A1M northbound is partly blocked after a collision. It's happened just before junction 9 for Letchworth and the A505. In Kent, there are long delays on the M25. That's partly blocked anti-clockwise after a multi-vehicle collision in the Dartford Tunnel, with queues back to junction 3, turn off for the M20. In Surrey and Woking, Victoria Way, the A320, that's been shut after a building became unsafe near Lockfield Drive. In Hampshire, the M27 eastbound is partly blocked. There's been a collision there just by the turn-off for the M275. 2 lanes shut there, so do expect some queues on the approach there as well.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, today is Holocaust Memorial Day, and currently, as you can see, live pictures on your screen, a commemoration event is taking place to mark the 80th anniversary of the Auschwitz Nazi death camp's liberation. And King Charles is in attendance and will be paying tribute throughout today's show. And Donald Trump has secured a huge victory by forcing Colombia to accept 2 planes full of illegal criminals that they originally had rejected. Well, then Donald Trump threatened a punishing 25% tariff on all imports from Colombia, and he even said he's going to cancel visas for all Colombian officials. Wouldn't it be brilliant if we did the same with our illegal immigrants? And a diversity guide issued to 3 major police forces has warned coppers not to use phrases like black sheep or blacklisted over, you've guessed it, fears that it's going to be called racist. Well, I'll be joined by a campaigner who says that this is, well, a black day for free speech. And that's all coming in your next hour. Who are these dunderheads that are running our police forces that think it's a good idea or a use of resource to look around for offensive words? Blacklisted, black sheep, a black day, a black mog. Does that make me racist? No. These are phrases that we've used for decades as part of the everyday conversation in Britain. 4 major police forces looking around for offence where there is none. Meanwhile, good luck finding old Bill to come round to your house if you had all your silver nicked. Good luck getting the cops to turn up if you've had your car windows pummeled through once again, your stereo has gone walkabout. What are they playing at? Why are they looking for offensive words? Why are they policing tweets and not policing streets? Have they completely lost the plot? Spoiler, yes. Get in touch usual ways, and that's gbnews.com/your say. We'll have a good rant about that later in the show, but now, here's your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after 4 o'clock. Well, a survivor of Auschwitz has warned that the growing rise in anti-Semitism around the world mirrors the conditions that led to the Holocaust. Speaking at the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the death camp, Miriam Tursky called for a moment's silence before reflecting on the importance of remembering the millions whose stories were lost. Survivors, including the now 98-year-old, returned to the site to lay wreaths and light candles. And earlier, King Charles said the responsibility of remembrance now rests on our shoulders.
The liberation of Auschwitz is both a sombre and indeed a sacred moment. It is a moment when we recall the 6 million Jews, old and young, who were systematically murdered.
In other news, 7 members of one of Scotland's worst child sex abuse rings have been handed lifelong sentences and warned they may never be released. The group inflicted horrific abuse, including rape and attempted murder, on children under the age of 13 over 7 years in a Glasgow drug den dubbed the Beastie House. The judge in the case described the abuse as beyond his experience and praised the children's courage and perseverance despite threats from the gang. The sentences, totalling over 93 years, include lifelong restriction orders, meaning the offenders will remain under supervision for life. A father has been convicted of murdering his 14-year-old daughter during what he claimed was a play fight at their home in July. Simon Vickers stabbed Scarlett Vickers in the chest with a kitchen knife, a blow prosecutors say could not have been accidental. A jury took over 13 hours to convict him by a majority verdict rejecting his claim it was a freak accident. Scarlett's mother, Sarah Hall, said the family had been joking moments before and stood by her partner during the trial. Mr Vickers will be sentenced on the 10th of February. A person in the West Midlands has contracted bird flu after close contact with infected birds. It's one of just 7 cases in the UK since 2021. And the individual is now stable in an infectious disease unit, according to the UK Health Security Agency. The infection was linked to a farm where birds were infected in a strain circulating across the country this season. And while the risk to the public remains very low, antiviral treatment has been offered to those at highest risk. Health officials are urging people to report sick or dead birds and follow strict biosecurity measures to protect both animals and humans. The Prime Minister and President Donald Trump have agreed to meet soon, following their first phone call since the inauguration. The 45-minute conversation focused on strengthening the US-UK's ties, the economy and the Middle East. It comes hours after President Trump had praised the Prime Minister for doing a very good job, he said. Meanwhile, Colombia has backed down in a trade dispute with the United States, agreeing to accept deported migrants after threats of 25% tariffs. Colombia's foreign ministry says it's resolved the impasse, even sending a presidential plane to collect the migrants. Meanwhile, the Shadow Minister for Business and Trade here, Dame Harriet Baldwin, told us she was glad to see that tariffs weren't discussed between President Donald Trump and the Prime Minister.
I'm delighted to see that it wasn't discussed yesterday, that we don't seem to be in the tariff firing line at the moment. But I think we've got to be, as a country, as a global trading nation, one that articulates the case for not having tariffs. And I'm very pleased that when the Chancellor gave evidence to the Treasury Committee earlier this year, she also made that point. So I think we've got to be a strong voice for free trade around the world.
Pharmacies have been raising the alarm over the online sale of weight loss jabs, warning of serious risks to patient safety. The National Pharmacy Association says some patients, including those with past eating disorders or low body weight, are being wrongly prescribed the drugs. They're now calling for stricter rules, insisting that a proper 30-minute consultation is needed before prescriptions are given. The NPA has now written to regulators demanding action to protect vulnerable patients. And a major incident has been declared in Somerset after heavy flooding overnight as rain and wind continues to batter parts of the UK. Over 30 flood warnings are in place across England, with residents in the worst hit areas evacuated. Emergency teams are also still on the ground, with 61 people rescued from some flooded properties. And a fresh yellow rain warning is in effect as Storm Hermine brings more downpours and strong winds, with relief centres set up in Chard, Ilminster and Somerton, with more unsettled weather expected through the rest of the week. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Westminster and Martin Daubney.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Now, it never rains, but it pours for our embattled Chancellor Rachel Reeves, because the reality of a potential recession is now intensifying as business leaders express worries about the impacts of upcoming tax changes on economic growth. Bosses in the private sector said they expected a significant fall in activity over the next 3 months, with the Confederation of British Industry warning that companies are now cutting staff, moving jobs overseas and curbing investment as they battle to cut costs and offset the impact of the Chancellor Rachel Reeves' looming tax changes. Well, I'm now joined in the studio by GB News' political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, we're going to stabilise the economy. The adults are back in charge. Everything is going to be tickety-boo. That's the promise. The reality is looking rather grim.
There's a gear change at the weekend, Martin, isn't there? You've got the Chancellor in Davos last week talking about investing in Britain, understanding the need to get the animal spirits in her language. Of course, language first used by economists in the past, and the Tory party grabbing the ideas of how capital investment is so important and capitalism is so important. But she recognises without growth, you can't do anything this government wants to do. They've spent a long time being gloomy about the economy. The Tories would say talking it down. Labour would say being realistic about what they say is a £22 billion black hole they uncovered when they came to power. So, yeah, we have got Rachel Reeves out on Wednesday in a big speech, setting out how she wants to get the economy going. We're expecting news on 3 airports expansions, Luton, Gatwick and Heathrow, even reports in local papers near I'm from, up in Bedfordshire area, Hertfordshire area, of a new Universal Studios to rival Disneyland Paris up in Bedford. So all sorts of big planning, big spending announcements. They're trying to change the mood music. The problem is the actual facts of what's going on are not great. Sainsbury's cutting 3,000 jobs, concerns about the impact of national insurance increase for employers, and she's meeting regulators trying to lift regulation, get the economy booming.
Well, they might need a superhero on that movie set. I don't think they've got one in the government at the moment, and there's a poll out over the weekend, so now only 42% of the public have faith in Rachel Reeves and the Labour Party, plummeting confidence. And as you say there, the Confederation of British Industry saying there's little optimism. They were hoping for an uptick in the new year. There's a disastrous Christmas period. That hasn't come. And let's talk now about my favourite topic, Brexit. Because at the same time as the boom time that's going on in America, Donald Trump expected to drill, baby drill, slash corporation tax, all kinds of executive orders, huge optimism. This side of the pond, it's doom time. And it worse, cozying up to Brussels. 5 years on this Friday is the Brexit +5 when we left the European Union. Everybody is saying, what about looking towards Donald Trump? Except the Labour Party. They want to jump back into bed with Brussels.
This is the choice this government faces. Where do they go? Towards the US and trying to be more outward looking towards the US, or towards the EU? And I think the government right now is choosing to get better bilateral ties with leaders in the European Union. That's right. This Friday, the government has no plans to mark the 5th anniversary of Brexit.
What?
Well, they aren't. You might be. I know you'll be having the champagne, won't you, as a former Brexit Party MEP, Martin?
Well, what I would say is it's an historic and significant moment. 5 years on,
but not one.
It's worthy of noting. The government aren't even acknowledging it exists.
But not one to be celebrated by this government. The PM is due to go early next week to Brussels and speak to the leaders of the EU 27 countries. The first time a UK PM has addressed all 27 EU leaders. But as things stand, nothing to celebrate on Friday. The government has talked to the PM spokesman has talked to our colleague Adam Cherry in the past half an hour. They say they're looking forwards, not backwards, for making Brexit work. They're taking advantage, the government says, of our position to drive economic growth
by going to Brussels
and work with the EU on security, as already announced. But by going to Brussels and trying to talk to them more closely. No outright denial of being part of this Europe as a continent supply chain idea mooted by Maros Saskovich just last week in Davos. So mood music is getting closer to the European Union. The worry's going to be, though, by doing that, do we tie ourselves to the regulation of the EU, which means we're less able to do a good deal or a good trade deal with the rest of the world, and particularly US.
Well, Germany's barreling towards a recession. France is going down la toilette. Why on earth would they choose to get closer to the European Union? When Donald Trump's been on the blower overnight, there's a deal to be done there. Do a deal with America. You know, that's where the future lies. Surely just look at the metrics.
They did discuss in that chat yesterday, 45-minute chat with the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, with Donald Trump. The issue of trading was discussed, I think, of better trade. The issue of tariffs on the European Union and UK was not discussed. In fact, what was interesting was how little was discussed, and we would argue, of issues of our most important to the UK. Chagos Islands, not discussed. Greenland, whether the US tries to buy it or even invade it, not discussed. The issue of defence spending, 5% of GDP. We're nowhere near that. We're 2% and could be delayed till 2032, according to reports, not discussed. So I think the issues we would think are important by the accounts of both the two groups in the room were not discussed.
And meanwhile, reports over the weekend that Rachel Reeves might even consider something approaching rejoining some form of single market. Astonishing. A parallel universe, Chris.
No, well, it might work. It might just work. They are our biggest. They're our biggest. Yes,
you voted to leave. All that nonsense. 5 years on.
They're not touching sovereignty, Martin. So the issue of customs union, single market, freedom of movement, they are not discussed. I know with Brexit, the lid's full over your eyes, and you can't bear talking on it.
No.
But they would say they're trying to make it work. Some would say it hasn't worked so far.
Well, I would say Brexit wasn't properly done. This is the conversation we're going to have all day Friday.
Very happy to.
I'm just starting to get on my haunches about it, because I'm telling you, this lot should be trying to make it work better by doing, I don't know, like what they did in Ireland.
That's what they're doing.
Have
they're talking to the European Union.
13.5% corporation tax, slash taxation rate, get Britain growing again, not going back towards blooming Brussels. This one's going to run and run. Chris Hoke, thank you very much. You give me a nice shot of adrenaline there to get me back up into the room. Beautiful. Now we can speak with the economist, Dr. Andrew Lillico. Welcome to the show. Sorry, Andrew, I digressed there and foamed at the mouth slightly about Brussels. It goes with the turf. On a serious point, things aren't looking exactly tickety-boo for the Chancellor. We hear that there's a new movie studio being built in Britain, but it's looking very much like there'll be no Hollywood ending for this economy at the moment.
No, things are looking increasingly difficult. On your show before, I've said a number of times that we should have expected that the first 3 months of 2025 would be difficult for the economy, because in 2023, the Bank of England raised interest rates, you'll remember, quite fast, and they also engaged in quantitative tightening, so reversing QE, and the combination of those things led to a very sharp fall in the money supply in the year to September 2023. Now, you'd normally expect there to be an 18-month lag, so by March 2025, you'd expected that to be kicking in, and it's coming right on schedule. It's surprisingly precise this time. And to add to that, we have the problem that Jeremy Hunt had raised taxes very high to an unprecedented level that the UK economy has never generated since World War II, and also keeping taxes very high for many years in a row, which has just never been done before. Now, I think that the reality, and Rachel Reeves has doubled down on that by doing even more. Now, Reeves is going to be in a very difficult situation if the economy contracts as much as it looks like it's going to do, even goes into recession, because her fiscal plans are going to be shot absolutely to pieces. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, she'll have to raise taxes again. But the reality is that with taxes already so high, attempting to raise them even further would be likely to make the economy go even further down. So you get a further contraction in the economy, and the tax revenues go down, even though the tax rates go up, meaning that her spending plans go even more awry. And there's no very obvious way out of this. Some people say, oh, well, they'll have to cut spending. But Labour MPs weren't elected to cut spending. If Reeves and Starmer started trying to cut aggregate spending, they'd be out. The Labour MPs would oust them. So they can't raise the taxes, they can't raise the spending. The debt, if the deficit and the debt go any higher, they're going to break all their rules. It's not very clear that there's any way out of this for them other than to hang on and hope that luck rescues them. Which it might. It's possible that if they can just sort of cling on by their fingernails through the next few months and get through into 2026, then the economy might start picking up a little bit again. We've got quite a number of developments in terms of new innovations in tech. So we have all this stuff with Elon Musk. He's going to be going off to landing on the moon in 2026, and Trump says they're going to be setting off to Mars in 2028. Of course, the UK is quite strong in the space sector, so that might stimulate lots of things for us there. There's developments in AI, and we have some new announcements of that today with some stuff from the Chinese showing that there's big reductions in the cost of producing some of the AI. That could boost the economy. There are other technologies coming through, cancer vaccines and green tech and who knows what. So these things, if you can get through enough into the future, there are a number of new technologies which might rescue her. But that would just be brute luck. That's a kind of economist's Hail Mary, if you like. That's the situation that she's in. She doesn't have any control over her own destiny at all.
Andrew, I honestly admire your optimism. You're not only glass half full, but I'm wondering what you've been drinking. But on a serious point, meanwhile, the Institute for Fiscal Studies are warning that Labour may have to hike taxes. That's austerity. George Osborne, Mark II, the precise thing they promised they would never do. It seems we were promised the world by this government, and reality is starting to bite.
Absolutely. That's what people are saying, that taxes will have to go up. But I don't think that further rises in the tax rate will generate any extra tax revenue. So there's every chance that they will try this. They may feel like they've nothing else that they can do. But I think that it will be self-defeating, that the attempt to raise taxes further will make the economy go down further, and that will make the tax revenues go down further. So it will just fail as a policy. And if they do it too much, that could lead us to a crisis before these other kinds of things can rescue us a little bit further ahead. So I think the next few months are very, very dicey. It's very much a matter of clinging on by your fingernails. And who knows, there are those who are saying we could see the IMF in 6 months' time. So I think it's a very, very dicey situation that we face.
OK, Dr. Andrew Ledico, thank you very, very much for joining us. Chris, quick word from you. It does feel like reality is biting. We were offered so much in terms of change, turning the page on 14 years of Tory chaos. It's getting worse.
There's a worry. I mean, Andrew Lindico, he's got his data there. There's a concern that the mood has been so damp. I mean, the Tories say talking down the economy. It's hard not to agree with that, really. I mean, I think that, and the combine that with the double whammy on businesses of increasing minimum wage and also increasing the tax that you pay if you employ people by 2% on national insurance. That's why there's a real worry at the moment about the economy. And, of course, soaring debt, sluggish growth. It's not great. The stagflation is stalking the economy, and that's why I think Rachel Reeder's intervention on Wednesday matters so much to all of us.
Maybe they get down Jeremy Corbyn's allotment and find a nice little magic money tree that's been nestling there since the last time. Chris Hope, always a pleasure, never a chore. Now moving on, coming up, a commemoration event is taking place currently, of course, to mark the 80th anniversary of the Auschwitz Nazi death camp's liberation. King Charles is in attendance, and we will be paying tribute throughout the rest of the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
A woman of 53 has believed for 18 months she was in an online relationship with Brad Pitt.
I think we're seeing pictures. So these are the pictures that she received that made her believe that she was in this relationship with Brad Pitt.
And you'll see that some of it is in hospital because the scammer was claiming that he was suffering from cancer. This was playing very much on her emotion. So this is a divorcee who lived in Mauritius. She'd received a £700,000 divorce settlement, or £650,000 divorce settlement, I should say, and £700,000 has been taken from her through this scam.
Yeah.
As she was becoming, every time she became suspicious, the money was taken for payment of charges on gifts that she never received, and then hospital fees. There was lots of emotions being played into there. Now, as somebody, I'm a rom-com writer by trade, so I write romantic fiction. And one of the books I've written has actually been about somebody who did online dating, got herself into a whole heap of trouble. Not quite. She wasn't in a relationship with Brad Pitt, but she met somebody dodgy. So because I've written that book, I've met a lot of people who've come up to me and said, "Oh, it's happened to me." This
scary in this digital age, isn't it?
They've lost 700,000, but somebody has tried it on. Somebody kind of... my question is, would a man go 18 months in a relationship online without seeing somebody and keep it going? Or is this feeding into this neediness of a particular demographic of a woman who that's better than anything else she got going on in her life, was what was being fed to her over the internet? I just
and then maybe a little bit of her knew, but she kind of just suppressed it because she
was hoping it was Brad Pitt.
Her daughter apparently for a year was saying, this can't be true, come on, think about it. But she just fell for it. But I just wonder, what's right, it's a very sad story. She's obviously now getting a lot of hate and ridicule as well.
Because she's been on French TV and she's had a huge amount of pushback from it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 4:23. Now, today, of course, we are marking Holocaust Memorial Day, and commemorations have been held at the site of Auschwitz-Birkenau to mark the 80th anniversary of the Nazi death camp's liberation. You see live pictures on your screen now. Throughout the afternoon, speakers, survivors of the Holocaust at Auschwitz have been speaking. 1.3 million Jewish people were sent there. 1.1 million were murdered or died of malnutrition or affiliated illnesses. It was the biggest mass extermination of humans in one place in the history of humanity. In total, 17 million people died during the Holocaust, including 6 million Jews, 4.5 million Soviet citizens, 3.3 million Soviet prisoners of war, and 1.8 million Poles. And throughout the service, which has been attended by world leaders, including King Charles, President Zelensky of Ukraine, Meloni of Italy, Macron of France, Scholz of Germany. Survivors have been speaking. We can cross now and speak with GB News' royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who joins us from outside Auschwitz. And Cameron, we're expected later on in the day for the King Charles, the first ever member of the royal family to attend one of these services, to lay a wreath and light a candle. You're outside that astonishing place. Tell us more.
Said nothing.
Yes, I am, Martin. Just to my right is this specially built tent over what's been known as the Gates of Death, with that infamous cattle car is the best way to describe it, going through the archway, which brought, of course, thousands and thousands of people, men, women and children, into the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp to their deaths. A vast majority, having come off the train, were killed in gas chambers. 1.1 million people murdered in Auschwitz during the course of the Second World War. And every single person who has spoken today during this special commemoration service has been survivors or those who work to preserve the memory of both the victims and the survivors. Yes, there are many world leaders in attendance, including King Charles, his first visit to Auschwitz-Birkenau. It's also the first ever visit of a British head of state to the former Nazi concentration camp. We also have Emmanuel Macron, we have President Zelensky, as you said. We also have the King and Queen of Spain, the King of the Netherlands as well. But all of these world leaders are not speaking. They are just listening very poignantly to the stories of these survivors, because from speaking to survivors both here on GB News and the Jewish community here in Krakow over the last 24 hours or so, I can tell you they're incredibly worried about the rise of anti-Semitism here in 2025. In fact, Tova Friedman, who we spoke to on GB News a little earlier and who has just delivered a speech at the commemoration service, she says she is deeply concerned that the anti-Semitism experienced by Jews in 2025 45 essentially mirrors that of what was experienced in the 1930s and 1940s. That's what Tove Friedman, Auschwitz survivor, is worried about. But later on during this service, when we have heard from the survivors, there's around 50 or so at the commemorations here today. 7,000 were liberated 80 years ago by the Soviet Red Army. King Charles, survivors and other world leaders will be laying candles around that freight train that I spoke about earlier. And then, Martin, as you said, the King will be travelling a little bit further down the road to Auschwitz I, the first concentration camp here at Auschwitz, with its infamous death wall, where the SS, that's the military arm of the Nazi Party, executed so many prisoners, thousands of them, by shooting them against that wall. The King is also expected to view a number of items confiscated by so many prisoners, including pairs of glasses, piles of them, suitcases, clothing as well, and of course the incredibly graphic tank of human hair that was shaved off of the victims following their extermination is in gas chambers here at Auschwitz-Birkenau. It will be incredibly poignant. The King has looked visibly emotional throughout the day here. He started in Krakow at the Jewish Community Centre, and now, of course, he is here in this special tent erected over the gates of death here at Auschwitz-Birkenau. But he will also be walking through another gate, the Arbeitsmannfreiheit Gate, which translates from German into English as "work will set one free." And as the Queen said during an event she attended last week to mark Holocaust Memorial Day, that was probably one of the most brutal lies in human history.
Just saw on your screen there the Queen of Spain and Emmanuel Macron's wife. And, you know, the speaker you referred to there, Tove Friedman, I was fortunate enough to hear her speak when I was a member of the European Parliament 5 years ago on the 75th anniversary, and she spoke, must have been about 1,000 people in the room there at Brussels in the plenary, and the place was absolutely silent as she told her story, some of which she said again today. She said, at the time, we were victims in a moral vacuum. She talked about how she was aged just 5.5, but she had the spirit of rebellion in her then. She was forced to stand naked with every other woman and child in that group in the freezing cold as they're inspected by the Nazis. And she said, I refused to look them in the eye or look at their teeth. I didn't want to give them any humanity. We must all reawaken our collective conscience to transform this hatred that has so powerfully ripped apart our society, she said, of course referring to the fact that the stain of anti-Semitism still lives on to this day. Earlier on we heard from Marian Tursky, again a 98-year-old survivor of Auschwitz. His brother and father were murdered there. They didn't make it. He went on one of those death marches and somehow survived. And he said the tsunami of anti-Semitism is still alive today. And he talked about how we are still fighting Holocaust denial. He referred then to Hamas, to October the 7th, and it seems inconceivable that the events of Auschwitz could ever be repeated again. And yet he pointed out that the same poisonous mindset still exists. Cameron Walker, just bring you back in now. Do we have any idea about the timings of what we can expect from King Charles? We're expected him to go to that death wall around about 5 p.m, is that correct?
Well, we know the service here, Martin's lasting around 2 hours, and then presumably he'll make his way straight there. So I can't imagine it will be too long after that, Martin. But as you were mentioning there about the connotations to the modern day and people almost sometimes not believing that the Holocaust, the scale of the Holocaust took place here and the place of anti-Semitism in this world, unfortunately, still. And a number of people have been pointing out today to me that what's behind me, Auschwitz-Birkenau, this vast industrial scale killing machine did not spring up overnight. It started with very small acts of hatred or division, by the Nazis and also complacency by the general population to allow the anti-Semitism to take hold. Those seeds then spread into death camps such as Auschwitz-Birkenau behind me. And of course, we have been talking about the horrors throughout the day. 6 million Jews murdered during the Holocaust, 1.1 million people murdered here at Auschwitz. So it will be incredibly poignant for the King to be walking around the Auschwitz one later on. I understand he will be seeing several items on display there in Auschwitz. He's also had a meeting with President Duda of Poland, and elsewhere in the United Kingdom, the Prince and Princess of Wales are marking Holocaust Memorial Day too in the United Kingdom. So we will have more on that later, but it looks like it is the royal family very much leading the UK's commemorations of the horrors of the Holocaust here today.
Thank you, Cameron Walker, for that update live from Auschwitz on the 80th anniversary of its liberation from the Nazis. And of course, we'll cross back to that event throughout the afternoon, including that moment where King Charles lays that wreath, lights a candle at the death wall there later this afternoon. We believe around about 30 minutes' time. Of course, we'll cover that throughout the rest of the show. Lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including Donald Trump has scored a massive victory by forcing Colombia to accept 2 planes full of illegal criminals that they had originally rejected. Is that what strong leadership looks like? Is that what we should be doing with our illegal immigrants here in the United Kingdom? But first, here's your headlines, and it's Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. Plenty more on news on the Holocaust Memorial later this hour. First, though, a look at the other stories making the news. 7 members of one of Scotland's worst child sex abuse rings have been handed lifelong sentences and warned they may never be released. The group inflicted horrific abuse, including rape and attempted murder on children under the age of 13, over 7 years in a Glasgow drug den dubbed the Beastie House. The judge described the abuse as beyond his experience and praised the children's courage and perseverance despite threats from the gang. The sentences, totalling over 93 years, include lifelong restriction orders, meaning the offenders will remain under supervision for life. The Prime Minister and President Donald Trump have agreed to meet soon following their first phone call since the inauguration. The 45-minute conversation focused on strengthening ties between the United States and UK, the economy and the Middle East. It comes hours after President Trump had praised the Prime Minister for doing a very good job. Meanwhile, Colombia has backed down in a trade dispute with the United States, agreeing to accept deported migrants after threats of a 25% tariff. Colombia's foreign ministry says it's resolved the impasse, even sending a presidential plane to collect the migrants. Here, a father has been convicted of murdering his 14-year-old daughter during what he had claimed was a play fight at their home in Darlington last July. Simon Vickers stabbed Scarlett Vickers in the chest with a kitchen knife, a blow prosecutors say could not have been accidental. A jury took over 13 hours to convict him, by majority verdict rejecting his claim that it was a freak accident. Scarlett's mother, though, Sarah Hall, had said the family had been joking moments before and stood by her partner during the trial. Mr Vickers will be sentenced on the 10th of February. A person in the West Midlands has contracted bird flu after close contact with infected birds. It's one of just 7 cases in the UK since 2021, and the individual is now stable in an infectious disease unit, according to the UK Health Security Agency. The infection was linked to a farm where birds were infected with a strain circulating the UK this season. With risks to the UK public still very low, antiviral treatments have been offered to those at highest risk. And health officials are urging people to report sick or dead birds and follow strict biosecurity measures. And a major incident has been declared in Somerset after heavy flooding overnight as rain and wind continue to batter parts of the country. Over 30 flood warnings are in place across England, with residents in the worst hit areas evacuated. And emergency teams are still on the ground rescuing people from flooded properties. A fresh yellow rain warning is also in effect as Storm Herminia brings more downpours and strong winds, and relief centres have been set up in Chard, Ilminster and Somerton, with more unsettled weather expected through the rest of this week. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour, and Martin is straight back with you now.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead, it looks to remain unsettled, heavy showers and some longer spells of rain. Staying rather windy too, particularly across the far southwest. And it's all thanks to this area of low pressure just out to the west of the country. This is dragging in those showers. Also a good squeeze in the isobars, particularly in the southwest, where we're seeing the strongest of the winds as we head into this evening. So plenty of showers feeding through, these merging together to bring longer spells of rain. Could turn rather heavy at times, perhaps hearing some hail and thunder as we head into the overnight period, and could even cause some flooding issues, particularly across Wales and the southwest, where we've seen quite a lot of rain already. And under those cloudier skies, temperatures largely remaining above zero, but in the wind and rain, it could feel fairly cool at times. So to start on Tuesday then, plenty of showers across the south. As I say, these merging together, bringing rather heavy spells of rain for the Tuesday morning commute, so do take care if you're out and about. And similar across western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest of England, could see some rather heavy showers at times. And we may even see some winteriness amongst these showers as they fall across the Scottish Highlands, and still plenty of spells of rain across the Northern Isles too. So once again, heading into tomorrow, a very unsettled day on offer, and still rather windy, particularly across the southwest, where there is still a chance of gales across southwestern coast. So we could see a rather wet day on offer across parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, where those showers are set to remain through most of the day. And once again, still rather windy across northern parts of Scotland, and still could see a chance of some snow across hilly areas. Temperatures around about where they should be for the time of year, but something slightly milder just moving into the southwest, though amongst the wind and rain it could still feel rather chilly at times. A rain warning still in force across southern parts of Wales as we head into Tuesday evening, so once again we could see some impacts here. But from Thursday onwards there should be more dry weather around, perhaps even seeing some sunshine at times, and temperatures remaining around about average for the time of year.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Kent, there are delays of over an hour on the anti-clockwise M25 approaching the Dartford Tunnel. The left-hand tunnel is shut at the moment after a multi-vehicle collision earlier, with queues all the way back round past junction 3 for the M20. In Hertfordshire, the A1M northbound is partly blocked after a collision just before junction 9 for Letchworth. In Hampshire, the M27 eastbound is partly blocked. There's been a collision there at the turn-off for the M275. And in Devon at Apottery, the A303 remains closed in both directions. It's been shut after flooding between the Yarkham turn-off and Buckland St Mary turn-off, so do expect delays.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:39. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, time is running out and your chance to become our biggest ever giveaway winner with an incredible 50 grand in your bank account, and that's totally tax-free moolah to spend however the devil you like. Now, don't miss out. Here's all the details.
There's just 4 days left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it. Amazing, just the best feeling ever.
For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, Colombia has lifted their ban on deportation flights of illegal migrants from the USA after Donald Trump, of course, threatened the country with a 25% raise in import tariffs. And this comes as the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and President Trump have agreed the importance of close and warm ties between Britain and the United States. But don't they do business very, very differently on that side of the pond? And let's cross now to the Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray. Freddie, always an absolute pleasure. Well, Donald Trump said he meant business, and Freddie, by Jove, he's delivered on his promise, sending illegal immigrants back. Colombia say no, they're not allowed to land. Woof, Donald Trump goes in with threats of tariff, and before you know it, this president does a U-turn faster than Jeremy Clarkson.
Well, good afternoon, Martin. Yes, it certainly looks as though the Trump thunderstrike approach to immigration is already starting to bear fruit. I think the back and forth yesterday with the Colombian president was indicative of what he's about to do to other Latin America countries. It's very telling that he started with Colombia, because Colombia is the source country for an area that is of particular concern to US immigration officials, and that's the Darien Gap, which begins in Colombia and ends in Panama. And that it's thought that millions of illegal migrants have passed through that gap in the last 4 years. And they're not just Colombians, they're coming in from all over the world. And so to pick this fight with Colombia was very, very telling. And it's also particularly interesting, they picked this fight over very, very dangerous illegal criminals. That's convicted men who've been convicted of heinous crimes, murder, rape, child abuse, things like that. And this is part of the first phase of Trump's immigration plan, which is what they're calling the worst first. So they're going to get rid of the worst illegal migrants first and then move on to the next phase.
And Freddie, what's been astonishing as well is the leverage, the pressure that these tariffs allow Donald Trump to play hard and fast. It's like, look, we are an economic giant. You depend upon our country for your export market. And do you know what? If you don't play ball, we're going to annihilate you economically. And isn't that something else, Freddie, as well as sending out a clear message about that immigration channel you mentioned there, a clear message to the entire world that if you don't do what Donald Trump wants, he has the muscle to make you take the knee.
Well, exactly. Ever since he was a real estate dealer in New York, Donald Trump has understood the power of leverage. And there is no greater leverage than being the President of the United States of America, than being the federal government of the United States of America, because you have the most powerful economy in the world, you have the most powerful military in the world, and you can essentially bully other nations. Of course, this will create and does create great unease among America's allies, and perhaps opportunities for China and Russia to kind of peel away American allies in the future. But for now, it's an incredibly effective tool, and Donald Trump is going to use it over and over again.
Freddie, don't think it'd be the stuff of dreams to some people for the United Kingdom to do the same. It's like we can't deport rapists back to Pakistan. We can't get rid of Albanian drug dealers because of their human rights. And we have all sorts of financial leverage. We give millions and millions in foreign aid. Why can't we do the same kind of thing?
Well, funny enough, I was in Washington last week for the inauguration. And almost every American I spoke to who knew a tiny bit about Britain said what everybody in Trump world says. They're very concerned about Britain. They're very concerned about illegal immigration in our country. And they'd like to do everything they can to help. But it's also very noticeable that they don't really trust or like Keir Starmer's government. And I thought the phone call that Keir Starmer's just had with Donald Trump, while superficially warm and 45 minutes long, and I'm sure they said nice things to each other, it's telling that relations between Britain and America are not as close as they have been in the past. The special relationship, as it's usually called, is not in very good shape. And I think with Keir Starmer in power, that's unlikely to change anytime soon.
OK. Excellent stuff, as ever. Thank you very much for joining us. Freddie Gray, Deputy Editor there at The Spectator. Now, if you search the winter sun this winter, who can blame you? Well, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest winter sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. The south of Europe looks pretty unsettled over the next few days. Rain at times in most areas and windy in places too. So looking at things in more detail for Tuesday, the Canaries and Madeira, mostly fine, 1 or 2 showers but some sunshine too. Some persistent outbreaks of rain across parts of Spain, southern France into Italy, even some snow across the Alps. So it's the southeast of Europe set to see the best of the conditions. As we head into Tuesday and Wednesday, we hold on to fairly unsettled weather, but something a bit quieter later in the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Jonathan, in London, we're hearing that there could be more posties from an Amazon point of view in order to limit or cut carbon emissions, but that they could put more people on foot delivering their parcels.
This is really interesting because more and more people now obviously are using Amazon and buying their shopping online or buying gifts online. And it's interesting that in London they're talking about putting their Amazon workers on foot. There are now parts of the country, I think Milton Keynes is one part of the country, where there's robots delivering parcels, or
Really?
you'll see these. Well, they call them robots. You'll see these little things sort of bundling down the street.
Yes.
Sort of
robots.
Yeah, I mean technically they're a robot, but when I think of a robot, I think of a sort of
a humanoid robot.
Yeah, sort of humanoid thing, sort of Lost in Space style robot. But actually, they're sort of little sort of carriages, little
droids,
boxes.
like
Yeah.
Star Wars droid type.
Well, they're not
thing.
even that. They're like a little sort of, they're like a box on wheels, delivering parcels in places like Milton Keynes and other bits of the country. So I think this is just another example of how the world is changing. Online shopping is completely changing the way in which we all live our lives, the way things, the way
But
in
I
which
think
things are
Milton
delivered.
Keynes lends itself to something like that. This is a newly designed town.
Yeah.
in the
Yes.
last-
Exactly,
in the
that's
last
why they're in
70
Milton Keynes,
And
yeah.
I really do think that a town like that really does lend itself towards a piece of tech like that. When I think back, our postie in Gloucestershire is a guy called Dave. He's fantastic. Everyone knows who he is. But I'm not sure that he could be replaced by one of these little droid things.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's approaching 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the mayor of a London-based council accused of waging a war on motorists recently boasted, wait for it, about being driven around in a taxpayer-funded limousine. John Paul Ennis, who is the Labour mayor of Lambeth, there he is, said being chauffeured around in a nice car was one of the best perks of the job, which is despite some of his residents having to pay a whopping £800 a year for a parking permit. Now, let's have a quick listen to this ridiculous interview.
Mayor of Lambeth in the building, man. What's it like to be a mayor?
Yeah, it's mad, I can't lie. It's sick. Yeah, normally I wear, not a pouch, I wear a chain. So that's pretty nice, yeah. Get a nice car as well, get driven around. It's a vibe.
What's happened to his voice? He's a ginger fella. Anyway, we can now speak with the leader of Reform UK in the London Assembly, Alex Wilson. Alex, here we go. Man of the people, another Labour Party member of Parliament, politician, pouncing around in a limousine.
No, it's typical Labour hypocrisy, isn't it? I mean, we see day in, day out, these inner London Labour councils, they are LTN central. They are the front line in the war against London's drivers, putting their permit prices up. Low traffic neighbourhoods can't get through roads, to drop people off, to get to your own home, to get shopping, to business, whatever. And yet here we have one of the leading figures on that council boasting about he gets a nice car, he gets a nice ride. Well, lucky him. I mean, it's important to note that a mayor in a borough like Lambeth, the mayor isn't actually a kind of executive decision role. It's a kind of ceremonial role. So he's effectively like the head of state of the borough. And a lot of mayors in London boroughs do a lot of good work raising money for charity and so on and so forth. But it should be seen as very much an honour that you have perhaps towards the end of your time as a councillor, rather than being just a perk of the job.
Yeah, and fair enough. People can take a taxi. You could take a bus. I take a bus through Lambeth. You look if you can get a seat. The buses are packed. They're horrible. They smell. They're dirty. These are the sort of things that people don't like. There's no wonder he's swanning off taking a limousine, and I suspect he's the only one. Alex Wilson is not the only one. Isn't it true that Sadiq Khan, the London mayor's got a 300 grand limo, a Land Rover?
Oh yeah, he's still got his armoured Range Rover. It's the only elected member that's allowed to park at City Hall is the mayor. The rest of us, we have to get the bus or the train or tube, DLR, whatever, to get in. So again, it's one rule for those at the top and another for everybody else, and it's just typical Labour hypocrisy. I know this is a bit of a kind of silly story, really, and a bit of gossip, but it does kind of underline quite an important point that at all levels of government, Labour are making it harder and more expensive for ordinary people to drive their own cars, and yet when it suits them, the same rules don't apply.
And Alex Wilson, they've also put things called parklets, which is the mini park in Lambeth. Basically, it's a few planting boxes stuck in a car parking space, so you're not allowed to park there anymore. It's meant to be good for the environment. They're mostly full of, like, cans and empty chicken boxes. I know the area well. My cousin lives there. The streets are untidy. Public transport is packed. And meanwhile, the mayor is swanning around in a limousine. I suspect it's the tip of the iceberg. What next? They'll be taking a helicopter. Alex Wilson, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. That's the leader of Reform UK in the London Assembly, Alex Wilson. Now, I've got a quick statement from Lambeth Council, and they responded to us and said this: our youngest ever mayor goes to events across Lambeth every day and is inspiring young people, as seen on TikTok with DJ AG. He also cycles and takes public transport in his official role. Most London boroughs have a mayoral vehicle, and Lambeth is a hybrid. Of course it is. Of course it's a hybrid, and no doubt it's one paid for totally on the taxpayer token, perhaps funded by the hated LTNs. The LTNs, by the way, in Lambeth, that when it went to public consultation, 67.5% of the locals said they were either unhappy or very unhappy with the plan. They hate the things, they have no say, it doesn't bother the mayor, he simply takes a limousine. Now stick with us, I'm Martin Daubney on GB News Business News Channel. Now it's your weather, and here's Honor Critic.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead, it looks to remain unsettled, heavy showers and some longer spells of rain. Staying rather windy too, particularly across the far southwest. And it's all thanks to this area of low pressure just out to the west of the country. This is dragging in those showers. Also a good squeeze in the isobars, particularly in the southwest, where we're seeing the strongest of the winds as we head into this evening. So plenty of showers feeding through, these merging together to bring longer spells of rain. Could turn rather heavy at times, perhaps hearing some hail and thunder as we head into the overnight period, and could even cause some flooding issues, particularly across Wales and the southwest, where we've seen quite a lot of rain already. And under those cloudier skies, temperatures largely remaining above zero, but in the wind and rain, it could feel fairly cool at times. So to start on Tuesday then, plenty of showers across the south. As I say, these merging together, bringing rather heavy spells of rain for the Tuesday morning commute, so do take care if you're out and about. And similar across western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest of England, could see some rather heavy showers at times. And we may even see some winteriness amongst these showers as they fall across the Scottish Highlands, and still plenty of spells of rain across the Northern Isles too. So once again, heading into tomorrow, a very unsettled day on offer, and still rather windy, particularly across the southwest, where there is still a chance of gales across southwestern coast. So we could see a rather wet day on offer across parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, where those showers are set to remain through most of the day. And once again, still rather windy across northern parts of Scotland, and still could see a chance of some snow across hilly areas. Temperatures around about where they should be for the time of year, but something slightly milder just moving into the southwest, though amongst the wind and rain it could still feel rather chilly at times. A rain warning still in force across southern parts of Wales as we head into Tuesday evening, so once again we could see some impacts here. But from Thursday onwards there should be more dry weather around, perhaps even seeing some sunshine at times, and temperatures remaining around about average for the time of year.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Worcestershire, the M42 southbound is blocked after a collision. It's happened just before junction 2 for the A441 and Hopwood Park services. In the West Midlands, the M6 northbound, there are 3 lanes shut there after a collision. It's happened just before the turn-off of Birmingham and the Aston Expressway at junction 6, with queues back to the M42. In Essex, the M11 southbound is partly blocked after a collision approaching the M25 at junction 6. And in Kent, there are long delays on the M25 anti-clockwise. That's still partly blocked in the Dartford Tunnel after a multi-vehicle collision, with queues all the way back past junction 3 for the M20.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. Today is Holocaust Memorial Day, and currently a commemoration event is taking place to mark the 80th anniversary of the Auschwitz Nazi death camp's liberation. You can see their live pictures on your screen from that service presently taking place at Auschwitz. And King Charles is in attendance, and we will pay tribute throughout the rest of this afternoon's show. And Donald Trump has secured a huge victory by forcing Colombia to accept 2 planes full of illegal criminals they originally had rejected. Well, then Donald Trump threatened a punishing 25% tariff on all imports to America from Colombia, and also to cancel visas for all Colombian officials. Well, why can't we have the same strength of leadership in our country? And why can't we send back our illegal immigrants? And GB News has exclusively seen shocking social housing data. You can see a map of it on your screen there. That, for the very first time, shows the true extent of just how many properties are occupied by foreigners, those born overseas. Astonishingly, some boroughs have as much as 76% of housing stock taken up by foreigners, with 11 boroughs in London alone housing more foreigners than Brits. It's an astonishing situation. It's an exclusive, and that's on GB News next. And also a ridiculous diversity guide issued to 3 major police forces has warned coppers not to use phrases like black sheep or blacklisted, you've guessed it, over fears they could be racist. Well, I'll be joined by a campaigner who claims that this, well, is a black day for free speech. And that's all coming up in your next hour. Well, it's Joe, pleasure to have your company now. Stick around for a GB News exclusive. Astonishing data on social housing. We've long suspected that the housing stock, the social housing stock in this country, is being hoovered up by those born overseas, asylum seekers, those who come here legally but living below the breadline on benefits. Well, we've got the exclusive data we've worked up. We've looked at every constituency in the country. We've got a league of shame of where they are housing the most foreigners. What I mean by that is this is simply pushing Brits to the back of the queue. Some boroughs, it's almost 77% of all of the social housing stock taken up by those born overseas. It's incredible data, and that's here next exclusively on GB News. They're going to touch the usual ways by going to gbnews.com/your say. But now your headlines with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and very good evening to you. It's just after 5 o'clock. The top story today, well, a survivor of Auschwitz has warned that the growing rise in anti-Semitism around the world mirrors conditions that led to the Holocaust. Speaking at the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the death camp, Miriam Tursky called for a moment's silence before reflecting on the importance of remembering the millions whose stories were lost. Survivors, including the now 98-year-old, have returned to the site to lay wreaths and light candles today. And earlier, King Charles said the responsibility of remembrance now rests on our shoulders.
The liberation of Auschwitz is both a sombre and indeed a sacred moment. It is a moment when we recall the 6 million Jews, old and young, who were systematically murdered.
In other news, 7 members of one of Scotland's worst child sex abuse rings have been handed lifelong sentences and warned they may never be released. The group inflicted horrific abuse, including rape and attempted murder on children under the age of 13, over 7 years in a Glasgow drug den dubbed the Beastie House. The judge has described the abuse as beyond his experience and praised the children's courage and perseverance. The sentences, totalling over 93 years, include lifelong restriction orders, meaning the offenders will remain under supervision for life. A father has been convicted of murdering his 14-year-old daughter during what he claimed was a play fight at their home last July. Simon Vickers stabbed Scarlett Vickers in the chest with a kitchen knife, a blow prosecutors say could not have been accidental. A jury took over 13 hours to convict him, but by majority verdict rejected his claim it was a freak accident. Scarlett's mother, Sarah Hall, said the family had been joking moments before and stood by her partner during the trial. Mr Vickers will be sentenced on the 10th of February. A person in the West Midlands has contracted bird flu after close contact with infected birds. It's one of just 7 cases in the UK since 2021, and the individual is now stable in an infectious disease unit, according to the UK Health Security Agency. The infection was linked to a farm where birds were infected in a strain circulating the UK this season. While the risks to the public remain very low, antiviral treatments have been offered to those at the highest risk. And health officials are now urging people to report any sick or dead birds to follow strict biosecurity measures. The Prime Minister and President Donald Trump have agreed to meet soon following their first phone call since the inauguration. The 45-minute conversation focused on strengthening US-UK ties, the economy and the Middle East. It comes just hours after President Trump had praised the Prime Minister for, quote, doing a very good job. Meanwhile, Colombia has backed down in a trade dispute with the US, agreeing to accept deported migrants after threats of 25% tariffs. Colombia's foreign ministry says it has resolved the impasse now, even sending a presidential plane to collect migrants. Meanwhile here, the Shadow Minister for Business and Trade, Dame Harriet Baldwin, told us she was glad to see that tariffs weren't discussed between the President Donald Trump and Sir Keir Starmer.
I'm delighted to see that it wasn't discussed yesterday, that we don't seem to be in the tariff firing line at the moment. But I think we've got to be, as a country, as a global trading nation, one that articulates the case for not having tariffs. And I'm very pleased that when the Chancellor gave evidence to the Treasury Committee earlier this year, she also made that point. So I think we've got to be a strong voice for free trade around the world.
Pharmacies are raising alarms over the online sales of weight loss jabs, warning of serious risks to patient safety. The National Pharmacy Association says some patients, including those with past eating disorders or low body weight, are being wrongly prescribed drugs like Wegovy or Mounjaro. They're now calling for stricter rules, insisting that a proper 30-minute consultation is needed before prescriptions are given. The NPA has also written to regulators demanding action to protect vulnerable patients. And a major incident has been declared in Somerset after heavy flooding overnight, and rain and wind is continuing to batter parts of the UK. Over 30 flood warnings are in place across England, with residents in the worst-hit areas evacuated, and emergency teams are still on the ground, rescuing people from flooded properties. A fresh yellow rain warning is in effect too, as Storm Hermione brings more downpours and strong winds. And relief centres are set up in Chard, Ilminster and in Somerton, with more unsettled weather expected throughout the week. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. And we begin this hour by marking Holocaust Memorial Day. And commemorations have been held at the site of Auschwitz-Birkenau to mark the 80th anniversary of the Nazi death camp's liberation. You can see live pictures on your screen now of candles being lit at one of those empty rail carriages outside that. Those carriages, of course, were used to ferry 1.3 million sent there. 1.1 million Jews were murdered or subsequently died in Auschwitz, and in total 17 million people died during the Holocaust, including 6 million Jews, 4.5. Again, now King Charles there is, as you can see, lighting his candle as the head of state for the United Kingdom. King Charles lighting his candle as world leaders take their turn. As I was saying, there were 4.5 million Soviet citizens died there, 3.5 million Soviet prisoners of war, and 1.8 million Poles. And we can now speak with GB News' royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Cameron, welcome to the show. You're live outside Auschwitz there, and we just saw King Charles, the nominated head of state for the United Kingdom, lighting his candle.
We certainly did, Martin. The King there joining other world leaders, including the King and Queen of Spain, King and Queen of the Netherlands, as well as presidents across Europe. Emmanuel Macron, President Zelensky of Ukraine as well, joining in with those 50 survivors of Auschwitz, laying their candles at the foot of that freight carriage, as you said, that transported so many victims into Auschwitz-Birkenau behind me to meet their maker. 1.1 million people murdered over the course of the Second World War here in Auschwitz. a vast majority of those were Jewish. And we saw the final survivor lay her candle by the freight train, but just before the world leaders started, and she actually burst into tears and had to be comforted by family members. Of course, it is an incredibly emotional time for them because it probably is going to be the last major commemoration. The majority of them will be able to come to 80 years to the day that Auschwitz was liberated, see some of the items confiscated from victims and prisoners when they arrived here at Auschwitz. Piles of shoes, piles of glasses, suitcases as well. And he's also expected to lay a wreath at the famous death wall where the SS officers, SS military arm of the Nazi Party, executed so many prisoners by shooting them against that wall. So it has been a pretty poignant day for everybody here, an important commemoration for everybody across the world, reminding us of the horrors of the Holocaust and trying to ensure it doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Cameron Walker. And we're seeing pictures there from inside that very poignant candle lighting ceremony. Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte there meeting survivors on the front row. 50 survivors there today, far fewer than in previous years, of course, as their numbers dwindle simply through age. I'm delighted to say I'm now joined in the studio by the historian and the broadcaster Rafe Hadelmanku. Rafe, welcome to the studio. Always a pleasure to have your company, and I understand Auschwitz has a special significance and importance for you.
That's right. Two members of my own family, Wojtek Hedel and Professor Adam Hedel, were both murdered at Auschwitz. They were Polish Catholics, but in the first 2 years of Auschwitz being operational, it was primarily Polish political prisoners who were there. They were imprisoned for their anti-Nazi activities. They were actually ethnic Germans coming for 300 years ago. The family came to Poland, and I'm quite proud that they were offered safe passage out of Poland, being ethnic Germans, and they refused, saying we have nothing in common with the German people, and because of that they were sent to the death by firing squad, as Cameron was just saying, against that infamous death wall. They were shot. And I visited Auschwitz a couple of years ago, and I think it should be an essential trip for anyone to make, particularly school children. We now find out from latest polling that 1/3 of British children aren't able to actually name a single death camp that occurred. That's why these events are so important. You've just said, of course, there are only 50 survivors attending today. There were 300 10 years ago. So it's now up to us all to take up their mantle and make sure that the horrors of this atrocity, we must remember, Auschwitz alone was the site of the single largest mass murder on any single spot of land in human history. 960,000 Jews, 865,000 of which were gassed immediately upon arrival. 75,000 non-Jewish Poles, 20,000 Romani and Gypsies, 15,000 Soviet prisoners, and 15,000 other people, homosexuals, the mentally and physically disabled, and others. It's important that the worst atrocity in human history is not just forgotten, but also is not rewritten. I think that's just as important.
There have been a variety of speakers today, Rafe, most of whom have been survivors, and as you say, bowed by age, but their words undimmed. We heard from Marian Tursky earlier on, a 98-year-old survivor. His father and his brother both murdered at Auschwitz. He was sent on one of those infamous, horrendous death marches, yet he survived. He talked about the tsunami of anti-Semitism that still exists, Rafe. He talked about the astonishing situation. We are still fighting Holocaust denial, which is incredible to even entertain the notion when you're confronted by the realities of such horrors. And you mentioned there, Rafe, about making sure we don't forget, yet it seems some people at least are.
Every Remembrance Sunday, every Holocaust Memorial Day, we all say, never forget, and this must never happen again. And I'm afraid far too few people have forgotten. And of course, we now see in this country, 6.7 million people hold anti-Semitic views, according to the latest polling. That's 12% of the population of this country have anti-Semitic views. Just as shockingly, almost half of the world's population, 46%, 2.2 billion, now have anti-Semitic views. That has doubled within the space of 10 years. I'm afraid that the incidents of the Second World War are retreating into history and are being seen by the next generation and by people today as we would see perhaps the Napoleonic Wars. They've become such a distant memory. It's not a distant memory. This is still within the lifetimes of people who are alive today. My own family and many others watching this have experienced that hardship. And it's so easy. People in 1940 could never have imagined those horrors would occur in a million years. For them, that was the modern civilized age. We must ensure that in our modern civilized age, we don't descend down that same dark path.
And yet it seems we are heading down that path, in particular since October the 7th last year, and we're still, Rafe, in the midst of hostage negotiation releases. We're still living under the cloak of Jewishness being something which is viewed with contempt by certain cultures. We're still living in an age where war is being waged against Jewish people. Is it too much to ask that events like today might try and snap us out, perhaps, as we heard from the leader here of the anti-Semitic, the society in Auschwitz said the silence, the president of the World Jewish Congress said earlier, the world's silence led to Auschwitz. Rafe, do these events try to shatter the silence that we could be heading back towards the same dark mindset in the modern age?
You know, Primo Levi, one of the great chroniclers of Auschwitz, said that there are few men in the world who are evil, but they're not too dangerous because there are so few of them. It's the silent people, and it's those people, the common man, who chose to act without questioning what they were told to do. That's where the real danger lies. The danger does lie in the omission of not actually saying or doing anything. Of course, it's, and it's the conflation between Israel and Judaism and the Jews that is a great problem, because people are, of course, entirely free to legitimately criticize the policies or the actions of Israel, should they so choose. But that to lump in the rest of the Jewish population and to attack them for actions of a foreign government, if they are British citizens who are living as Jews, is wholly wrong. And so much now is able to be called anti-Israeli feeling when actually at its root it's deeply anti-Semitic. And we're all free speech champions here, and I'm so pleased with Elon Musk for freeing up Twitter. But through that freedom, you've actually seen not only a huge increase in anti-Semitic posts that I see, but a rehabilitation of Adolf Hitler. And the things that, as a free speech champion, then the First Amendment rights of America, there's nothing that I can say about taking it off. But I find it deeply disturbing that there are so many active voices on the left and on the right who are essentially buying into all the hackneyed tropes about Jews and Judaism.
Rafe, we've seen world dignitaries here, elected head of states laying candles. We've seen, of course, King Charles, Emmanuel Macron. We saw Justin Trudeau, the outgoing Premier of Canada, a short while ago. But you mentioned a fascinating point. None of them are speaking today. That's the correct thing to do, isn't it? This isn't a political event. This isn't a day for world leaders to posture. They are a sideshow. This should be about remembrance, and it should primarily be about those survivors.
That's precisely right, and it makes this event all the more poignant because, of course, you have senior survivors now approaching 100, some over 100. This is the last chance we'll get to hear their voices. Politicians have 364 days of the year to grandstand and make their points. And to be fair, people like Keir Starmer have also recently visited Auschwitz. There are other occasions of politicians to pay their tributes and their respects. This is the time for the whole world to actually listen, perhaps for the last time, to the first-hand oral accounts of those who lived through the industrial-scale attempt to eliminate an entire race of peoples.
Hey, Rafe Haile-Mankou, thank you very much for joining us today on the show and for sharing your memories, and may your forefathers rest in peace. Thanks for sharing that poignant story with us. Thank you very, very much. Now, we're coming back to this throughout the show later on, of course. We're expecting King Charles to lay a wreath a short time away. Now, coming up, GB News has exclusively seen shocking social housing data that for the very first time, look at that map, shows the true extent of just how many properties are occupied by those born overseas. You will not want to miss this astonishing data with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, you know I like an auction.
Yes.
And I've bought some strange things at auction before you have as well, haven't you, Eamon?
Yeah, well, Ellie would throw this in the bin that you're coming up with now.
How about this? Admiral Lord Nelson's hair.
No.
Cut. I mean, is this a bit spooky? Cut as he lay dying during the Battle of Trafalgar, so someone's gone, oh, we'll just have a little bit of that there. In 1805, is on sale in Jersey, and it's a little cup. How much would you pay for the hair?
No, nothing. It would go in the bin, straight in the bin.
What, even? What? Nelson? That's very disrespectful to the British culture and heritage.
I think it's disrespectful that he lay there dying and someone thought, we'll take a quick stick
Well, maybe
of hair.
maybe they just had, maybe they thought, you know, because there's obviously the famous painting, isn't there, of the Battle of Trafalgar. Maybe they thought, we'll give him a quick haircut, and then they kept their £15,000.
No
15 grand.
Where's
for a
the
lock of hair?
hair come from? What part of the body?
His
is the
head,
hair from?
Eamon.
Well, it could be his underarm. I don't know. You know, it depends.
Hold on, let me have a little look.
You would bid
It's very
more.
curly. I think it's his head. It's his head. What?
You would bid more for his head than, say, his underarm.
Well, I think so, yeah, I would hope so, yeah.
Or anywhere else.
I would hope so. A little less whiffy there, the head hair. And there it is. And it's in a little pot.
No.
And the only way you can probably find out is if you DNA test it, I guess. It's definitely his.
Whoever pays for that is bonkers.
Well,
That's creepy.
I was
Really
seriously tempted to make a bid for a toupee, not for me, but as worn by John Wayne.
John Wayne's wig?
Yeah.
Oh,
Why?
wow.
Why?
Well, why I didn't get it was my wife said to me, that is not coming into the...
Well, she's right. She's right.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 5:25 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, in a GB News exclusive, we have taken a deep dive into the shocking data for social housing across the United Kingdom, England and Wales. As you can see on your screen, that is London. And it shows for the first time the true extent of just how many social housing properties are occupied by those born overseas. These are foreigners in British social housing. Now, while the figure for the entire area of England and Wales is 19.2%. Some boroughs, astonishingly, are as high as 76%, with an incredible 14 boroughs in London alone featuring more foreigners than Brits. Well, to talk us through this incredible data, I'm now joined in the studio by the political commentator Mike Jones. Mike, welcome to the studio. First question is, I'm always exasperated we can't find data like this. Where's the data from? How did you get it? Talk us through how you managed to get to this stage for us to see today.
Well, it's official data.
Yep.
It's from the Office of National Statistics. So this is census-based data. So it's acquired through questionnaires, administrative data, and a certain amount of knocking on doors and asking questions. This isn't done often. The last one was in 2021.
Yep.
Now, an anonymous internet commentator called Elmar basically collated this data and he linked it into geographic software where he can put this on a map. So, points, polygons, and so on. So this gives a really sort of intuitive representation of social housing divided into British nationals and foreign-born household heads.
Great.
It's really good.
Great. So it's fascinating stuff and it's mind-blowing. Let's start to dive into some of the regions now. So as I said, it's 19.2% foreigners nationwide as a whole, England and Wales.
Yeah.
But then let's look at London. Let's get London on the screen now. This shows a heat map, as it were, of Greater London, all of the London boroughs. Let's get that on our screens and talk us through what we're seeing here, Mike.
So, yeah, this is quite astonishing stuff. So the borough that has the highest percentage number is Brent. 39% of British nationals in social housing, 61% non-UK household heads, about 50% of those are unemployed. In second place, you've got Westminster, so you've got sort of 40.3% UK-born nationals. Non-UK household heads, it's about 59.7%.
Yep.
Then you've got Haringey, 40.9%. Non-UK born, 59.1%. Ealing, 42.1% are British-born social, housing.
In fact, let's get that list up. I think we have the list that we can put on screen now. This shows all of those London boroughs. And what leapt out to me when we get that list up is there are 14 boroughs, where there are more foreigners in social housing. There it is, 14 boroughs with more foreigners in social housing than Brits. And the numbers are substantial. We see at the top of the list, as you referred to, there are nearly 17,000 foreigners in social housing. In Hackney, it's over 24,000. These are tens and tens and tens of thousands of people born overseas, Mike Jones, being given social housing, which presumably then won't go to Brits.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scarce resource. I mean, obviously, you'd expect to have higher social housing occupancy if you've got a higher number of foreign-born people in that particular region. I mean, that's just intuitive. It makes sense. But the whole arguments for large-scale immigration is that it's all, sugar and spice and all things nice. It greases the wheels of the economy. But what this data shows is that a scarce resource is going to people born overseas. And,
Let's look now at the next picture. This is where you really start to zoom in. This is for Brent. And as you said, Brent, if you like, is the worst offender. 61% of the entire social housing stock in Brent is given to foreigners. That's the heat map. You can see even, this map is so detailed, you can see individual estates. You can see individual streets with the darker the colour there, the more the foreign occupancy, and the number of social housing places given in Brent to foreign-born people is 16,998. That's an astonishing heat map we're seeing there, Mike.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, looking at the numbers of Brent, you've got sort of 39% that are sort of UK-born occupying social housing, and then you've got 61% with, foreign-born household heads. And, looking at the sort of raw numbers there, you've got, sort of 10,000, well, close to 11,000 UK-born, and then you've got, close to 17,000 foreign-born. And, I mean, that's just an astonishing figure. And
particularly when you see that this would be picked up by the taxpayer, and I wonder if there's any coincidence that today, in areas like this, we're seeing council tax bills going through the roof. We've got a couple of quick images to trot through before we end, because this is the pattern replicated across other cities too. I think next we have Birmingham. Birmingham is coming up next, and a similar pattern there, Mike Jones. You can see on that central figure there, which area is that? 69.2% of that particular borough.
Again, this pattern has been replicated in London. What you've got here are very sort of densely populated cities. You've obviously got sort of, if you like, anchor communities there where migrants have sort of familial or ethnic links to communities that are already established. And, the figures are astonishing because, sort of traditionally social housing is given to people who are sort of economically quite vulnerable. But this almost goes against the narrative that large-scale immigration is very good for the country. It greases the wheels of the economy. This data completely contradicts that.
It does, and the total number has to be in the hundreds of thousands across the entire nation. It's incredible data. Mike Jones, thank you very much for sharing it with us today at GB News as an exclusive. The kind of data they don't want us to get, and to get it, you have to put it through software yourself to tell the truth. Mike Jones, excellent. Thank you to your anonymous contributor for giving it to us here at GB News. Excellent. There's lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including a ridiculous diversity guide issued to 3 major police forces has warned coppers not to use phrases like black sheep or blacklisted over, you've guessed it, fears that that's racist. I'll be joined by a free speech campaigner who says, well, this is a black day for freedom of speech. First, though, here's your headlines. It's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you and good evening to you. It's just after 5:30. The top story, well, a survivor of Auschwitz has warned that the growing rise in anti-Semitism around the world mirrors the conditions that led to the Holocaust. Speaking at the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the death camp, Miriam Tursky called for a moment's silence before reflecting on the importance of remembering the millions whose stories were lost. Survivors, including the 98-year-old, have returned to the site to lay wreaths and light candles today. 7 members of one of Scotland's worst child sex abuse rings have been handed lifelong sentences today and warned they may never be released. The group inflicted horrific abuse, including rape and attempted murder, on children as young as 13 over 7 years in a Glasgow drug den. The judge, Lord Beckett, described the abuse as beyond his experience and praised the children's courage and perseverance despite threats from the gang. The sentences, totalling over 93 years, include lifelong restriction orders, meaning the offenders will remain under supervision for life. Shares in major US tech firms have plunged following the rise of a new, low-cost Chinese chatbot called DeepSeek. Launched just last week, the app has already overtaken rivals like ChatGPT to become the most downloaded free app in the United States. But the success was marred earlier by a large-scale malicious attack on DeepSeek, reportedly shortly after US markets opened. In early trading, Nvidia shares fell by 10%, with Microsoft and Meta also seeing losses. Developed for just a fraction of the cost of its competitors, the chatbot is now raising big questions about the future of America's AI dominance. Here, meanwhile, a person in the West Midlands has contracted bird flu after close contact with infected birds. It's one of just 7 cases in the UK since 2021, and the individual is now stable in an infectious diseases unit, according to the UK's Health Security Agency. The infection was linked to a farm where birds were infected with a strain circulating in the UK this season. And while the risk to the public remains very low, antiviral treatment has been offered to those at the highest risk. And a major incident has been declared in Somerset after heavy flooding overnight. Rain and wind is also continuing to batter parts of the UK. Over 30 flood warnings are in place across England, with residents in the worst-hit areas evacuated. And emergency teams have been on the ground today, with 61 people rescued from flooded properties. A fresh yellow weather warning is also in effect as Storm Herminia brings more downpours and strong winds. And relief centres have been set up in Chard, in Ilminster and Somerton, with more wet and unsettled weather expected throughout the weekend. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you at the top of the hour, and Martin will be back live from Westminster after this break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead, it looks to remain unsettled, heavy showers and some longer spells of rain. Staying rather windy too, particularly across the far southwest. And it's all thanks to this area of low pressure just out to the west of the country. This is dragging in those showers. Also a good squeeze in the isobars, particularly in the southwest, where we're seeing the strongest of the winds as we head into this evening. So plenty of showers feeding through, these merging together to bring longer spells of rain. Could turn rather heavy at times, perhaps hearing some hail and thunder as we head into the overnight period, and could even cause some flooding issues, particularly across Wales and the southwest, where we've seen quite a lot of rain already. And under those cloudier skies, temperatures largely remaining above zero, but in the wind and rain, it could feel fairly cool at times. So to start on Tuesday then, plenty of showers across the south. As I say, these merging together, bringing rather heavy spells of rain for the Tuesday morning commute, so do take care if you're out and about. And similar across western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest of England, could see some rather heavy showers at times. And we may even see some winteriness amongst these showers as they fall across the Scottish Highlands, and still plenty of spells of rain across the Northern Isles too. So once again, heading into tomorrow, a very unsettled day on offer, and still rather windy, particularly across the southwest, where there is still a chance of gales across southwestern coast. So we could see a rather wet day on offer across parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, where those showers are set to remain through most of the day. And once again, still rather windy across northern parts of Scotland, and still could see a chance of some snow across hilly areas. Temperatures around about where they should be for the time of year, but something slightly milder just moving into the southwest, though amongst the wind and rain it could still feel rather chilly at times. A rain warning still in force across southern parts of Wales as we head into Tuesday evening, so once again we could see some impacts here. But from Thursday onwards, there should be more dry weather around, perhaps even seeing some sunshine at times, and temperatures remaining around about average for the time of year.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Big problems in Warwickshire on the M6. The toll road is blocked from junction T3 to T4, just south of Lichfield, at the scene of an accident involving a couple of lorries causing long queues. And on the M11 in Essex, you can't exit the southbound slip road onto the clockwise M25 because of an accident causing long queues. And on the M25 heading out of Kent into Essex, the left-hand Dartford tunnel is closed. Investigation work is underway following an accident causing long delays. And in Devon, the A303 remains closed northeast of Honiton between Upottery and Buckland St Mary because of flooding. And trams remain suspended in southeast London between Lloyd Park and Addington Village because of problems with the signals over at Addington Village. And that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Well, good morning. Time is 5:39 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, 6 p.m, you know what it is. It's Jubes time. Jubes & Co. We can now speak with the Queen of Primetime Television, Michelle Dewberry. Jubes, always a pleasure. What's on your menu?
Hello, Martin. Well, what a treat for you tonight. I've got the Reform UK MP, Rupert Lowe, alongside him, Labour MP Barry Gardiner. Rupert Lowe says that we should be taking a leaf out of Donald Trump's book when it comes to the way that he's behaving, when it comes to his deportations. He's not having any of it at the moment. Obviously, that war has sparked out, war of words has sparked out now with Colombia and Donald Trump. So do we need to follow suit then or not? Also, I want to talk about what's going on when you've got grown men loitering outside of primary schools, and apparently they need to be spoken to say that's not the real done thing here. Is that the done thing anywhere? Loitering outside of schools, taking pictures of small kids? What on earth is going on? So we've got lots to discuss tonight, Martin.
In the red corner, Barry Gardiner. The turquoise corner, Rupert Lowe. In the middle, ringmaster Michelle Dewberry. It always kicks off. It's going to be beautiful. Jubes & Co. 6 o'clock. Always a pleasure. Now, moving on. A West End actor was blinded in his right eye after he was randomly attacked by an armed thug while waiting at traffic lights. And Mike Holloway needed stitches in his eyeball after an attacker, as you can see on your screen there, smashed through his van window with a metal object in Beckton in East London last year. Now, recently, the actor, who was currently unable to work, told of his ordeal and revealed he needs 3 operations over 9 months in a bid to save his eyesight. But I'm delighted to say Mike now joins me in the studio. Mike, what on earth happened to you? Now, people, of course, will remember you from Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. Tell us about where people know you from, and then this astonishing, random act of violence.
Yes, indeed. Well, people may know me from the Tomorrow People, from my pop group Flintlock back in the day, teenage kind of music and pop idoldom, and indeed record-holding Joseph. But more importantly, I've been quite fortunate to do a lot of work within the entertainment industry over a long period. But sadly, on the 18th of December last year, I was 9:20 in the morning in London on Woolwich Manor Way, going about my business to deliver something to someone, and I heard a banging on my car door. The handle was being rattled, but I locked my door in London, Martin, and the next thing I knew was a fist with something metal just punched through the driver's window into my face and knocked me over to the passenger seat. It happened that quick, and the resulting story is that I had a wonderful angel called Bobby, who was my witness, who saw it happen. We got to hospital in Essex. They couldn't deal with it because it was a bad injury, and I ended up in Moorfields Hospital on the 19th. My lovely wife was incredible, and I had an operation, and currently, as I sit opposite you, I have 6 stitches holding my eyeball together, and I've got at least 3 more operations to hopefully get my sight back.
Now, the astonishing thing about this is it was just a random act from some nutter. It's changed your life forever. The moment you can't see, your cornea is dislodged, you need to go undergo major eye surgery. But, Mike, a lot of people will be saying the obvious thing. Why has nobody been nicked? Well, I know Woolwich, right? You can't drive through Woolwich without getting a ticket for Ulez, right? The geezer was in a van or a car?
He was in a dark van, and I unfortunately wasn't able to take a photograph of the reg plate.
There's got to be CCTV
There's got to be CCTV there, and all I can say is that I do feel let down because it's GBH, it's not just stealing a handbag, not that that's making, you know, a small issue of that. That's bad enough. But being GBH, they dropped the case after 3 weeks. Saying
3 weeks?
No CCTV available. ANPR, I understand, is rife in London.
Of course it is.
I don't use London a lot, really.
The fact that I think we've got a picture of you in your acting, in your pomp and ceremony as Joseph. There you are, of course, record-breaking Joseph. So
thank you.
Thousands upon thousands of people have seen you in action, in your prime. Mike, what I don't understand is this. You can't turn right down a one-way street without getting nicked by Sadiq Khan's Ulez cameras. You can't move in London without a CCTV camera getting you for doing it. How on earth can somebody in a van with a registration plate get out, thump you, and not get caught on candid camera? It beggars belief.
Well, it beggars belief, and it made me so angry. I mean, I am getting help from victim support because they're very good. Moorfields, I have to say, you are stunning people. Thank you so much. All the specialists, the team there, and my wife, my family, everyone has been incredible to rally round this, because I'm not going to make light of the fact that this is so, I can't tell you, impactful. And that's why we had no choice, because I don't feel the police have done right by me. I think dropping the case so early, but I've got a witness to it. That's the key.
Well, you've got a witness, and you've got a lot of people listening in here that'll be pretty miffed about this, Mike Holloway, and you've got a GoFundMe going so people can chuck a few quid in.
Yes.
Of course, you can't work at the moment.
I can't.
Because you know, you're a half-blind actor.
Yeah.
You've got to recover, you need surgery. Yeah. And you also need justice. How can people get involved to help you?
Well, basically, the GoFundMe is brilliant. It's a brainchild of my wife and my daughters. You know, look, it could be 9 months. It's certainly going to be 6 months before.
How do they find it online? What have they got to type in to find your fund?
GoFundMe.com is the platform, which is stunning. And all you people running that, you're amazing human beings, and thank you so much for your support too.
And you type your name in, Mike Holloway,
Mike Holloway,
and you'll find it.
1L. There's quite a lot in the press today about what's gone on as well. But thank you to you, Martin, and everyone here. We can get the word out, and that's how you can help and support, because this is life-changing, and this is so impactful, I can't tell you.
Well, we want to do all we can to get justice for Mike Holloway.
Thank you.
Help you get better, and to help catch this scrote. Someone who thinks it's acceptable just to bash into you and walk away in broad daylight. CCTV camera. Unbelievable. Mike Holloway, we've simply run out of time. We have to leave it there. Always an absolute pleasure. Get well soon, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you very, very much indeed. And moving on, if you're in search of some winter sun this year, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest winter sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. The south of Europe looks pretty unsettled over the next few days. Rain at times in most areas and windy in places too. So looking at things in more detail for Tuesday, the Canaries and Madeira, mostly fine, 1 or 2 showers but some sunshine too. Some persistent outbreaks of rain across parts of Spain, southern France into Italy, even some snow across the Alps. So it's the southeast of Europe set to see the best of the conditions. As we head into Tuesday and Wednesday, we hold on to fairly unsettled weather, but something a bit quieter later in the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Estelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This was thought to be a Ruskin. Ruskin was a very considerable polymath, an artist as well as many other things. So do you know why it was submitted for reappraisal? Was there a bit of a suspicion that it had been misidentified?
No, as you say, you know, it's a service that Christie's offer. You can submit an artwork that you have, so anyone can submit it and request an estimate, and then the auction house's appraisal service allows you space as well to describe it and ask for evaluation. And Christie's sort of looked at it behind the sheet of dirty old glass and recognised a sort of Turner-esque mood and feel and ambience about it. And because there was this close relationship between Ruskin and Turner, which is fascinating, we'll come on to that shortly, but they sort of felt, well, the brushstrokes are very strong, the line is very economic, and the colour of the palette seems to be rather Turner-esque. And then they called in a specialist paper historian who confirmed that actually the paper that was used was one that Turner favoured himself. So yes, it was originally considered to be by Ruskin, but then we discovered something more magnificent. And don't forget what's really interesting. Now it's for sale. The lucky buyer is not just buying a picture. The lucky buyer is buying a life story, a relationship that actually changed the course of art history because of the relationship between Ruskin and Turner themselves.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, time is running out on your chance to become our biggest ever giveaway winner with an incredible £50,000 in your bank account. Of course, that's totally tax-free. You can spend it however you like. Make sure that you don't miss out.
There's just 4 days left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it. Amazing, just the best feeling ever.
For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, police officers have been urged not to use the terms black sheep or blacklisted in case they offend someone. The warning is part of a 9-page document forming a diversity guide for staff at Bedfordshire Police and Hertfordshire and also Cambridgeshire constabularies. Well, we can now speak with the founder of Fair Cop, Harry Miller. Harry, here we go again. They're at it. The humour police are out, and dare I say it, this is a black day for free speech.
It's been a black day for free speech for quite a long time now, unfortunately. The police have got themselves involved in a form of George Orwellian social engineering. They're acting like Newspeak, going through the dictionary, removing words and terms that they do not like and replacing them with ones which they approve. So instead of having someone who's pregnant, a pregnant woman, we have a pregnant person. It's that sort of absolute nonsense. But it's actually quite important as well, because without language, we are not able to communicate properly. And what I would say is this, that the police have become social crooks who are robbing us of our ability to speak accurately with one another. And personally, I'm absolutely sick of it. Ever since this started, what we've had, the police have removed the old grey matter and replaced it with Black Lives Matter. We've gone from pink washing to rainbow lace washing. But I tell you what, there's also been a hell of a lot of whitewashing going on this last few years, because the police these days don't seem to be able to lie in bed straight. You try and get information out of them and you can't. Why is that? Well, it's because they're operating with an agenda that you and I as normal people do not recognise. The police have become social engineers, and that's what this is all about, Martin. It's entirely wrong, it's entirely un-British, and Fair Cop and hopefully GB News will continue our war against this ludicrous anti-British nonsense. So there we go. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think you're pretty clear on that. As ever, Harry Miller sitting on the fence. They also said there is a concept called white fragility. Harry Miller, maybe you and I are both guilty as charged of that simply by being sick to death of what they're saying. Harry Miller, we have to leave it there. We simply ran out of time. Always a pleasure to see you, my old son. You take care. Now, a spokesperson on behalf of the three forces has said this. The information we have issued aims to provide guidance to help our officers and staff identify difference in our communities and treat the public we serve with respect. We regularly review such guidance to ensure that it remains current. So there we go. Now, that's all from this show today, but I'll be back at 7 p.m. I'll be covering for Farage. And don't forget, don't go anywhere, because up next is Jubes & Co., the fierce debate show in town. It's Rupert Lowe versus Barry Gardner, the red corner versus the turquoise corner, and in the middle, Jubes & Co., the ringmaster. That's next. And I'll see you at 7. But now is your weather, and it's on a critic.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead, it looks to remain unsettled, heavy showers and some longer spells of rain, staying rather windy too, particularly across the far southwest. And it's all thanks to this area of low pressure just out to the west of the country. This is dragging in those showers, also a good squeeze in the isobars, particularly in the southwest, where we're seeing the strongest of the winds as we head into this evening. So plenty of showers feeding through, these merging together to bring longer spells of rain. Could turn rather heavy at times, perhaps hearing some hail and thunder as we head into the overnight period, and could even cause some flooding issues, particularly across Wales and the southwest, where we've seen quite a lot of rain already. And under those cloudier skies, temperatures largely remaining above zero, but in the wind and rain, it could feel fairly cool at times. So to start on Tuesday then, plenty of showers across the south. As I say, these merging together, bringing rather heavy spells of rain for the Tuesday morning commute. So do take care if you're out and about. And similar across western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest of England, could see some rather heavy showers at times. And we may even see some winteriness amongst these showers as they fall across the Scottish Highlands, and still plenty of spells of rain across the Northern Isles too. So once again, heading into tomorrow, a very unsettled day on offer, and still rather windy, particularly across the the southwest, where there is still a chance of gales across southwestern coast. So we could see a rather wet day on offer across parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, where those showers are set to remain through most of the day. And once again, still rather windy across northern parts of Scotland, and still could see a chance of some snow across hilly areas. Temperatures around about where they should be for the time of year, but something slightly milder just moving into the southwest, though amongst the wind and rain it could still feel rather chilly at times. A rain warning still in force across southern parts of Wales as we head into Tuesday evening, so once again we could see some impacts here. But from Thursday onwards there should be more dry weather around, perhaps even seeing some sunshine at times, and temperatures remaining around about average for the time of year.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Major problems in Warwickshire for the M6 toll tonight. The motorway is blocked northbound from JT3 to T4, so this is just at the Weeford interchange to the south of Lichfield at the scene of an accident. And if you're heading down the M11 through Essex, be warned the exit slip road is closed onto the clockwise M25, causing long queues. Recovery work and emergency repair works continue following an accident. And there are long queues out of Kent into Essex